is a presentation of Sertoba Media and Comey Media Incorporated.
I know what you're saying to yourself. Cole, wait a minute. Football season's over. Aha, the NFL season's over. But Total Football Talk continues right now. Welcome to Total Football Talk. Hard-hitting, grind, action, news, and fun, just the way you like it. I am one of the co-hosts of this program, Cole Johnson, a.k.a. the Mad Scientist and EP Extraordinaire, and I am joined, as always, by the other co-hosts of this program, Mr. Commander's Gridiron Report, Mr. Interrupt Sports Debate. I'm Mr. D. Willie in the evening, amongst others. The man in charge of the D. Willie Bucks, D. Willie, a.k.a. Drew Willingham. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great out here today, brother. Glad to be back with you here on this other Tuesday for episode 25 of Total Football Talk. Definitely looking forward to another great episode with you today, and got a lot in store to discuss with our people out here on these streams.
Wow. We've actually gotten to almost a half a year shows. Goodness gracious. The time flies. Wow.
It doesn't feel like it's been this amount of time, but that's what happens when you're having fun.
Yeah. And speaking of having fun, I think we're going to have real fun. Our brother Ike has returned. What is up, my man? He says, good morning, my homies.
Yeah, with the M-U-H. I like the spelling there, Ike. Welcome back this morning there, my man.
It's good to see you. And Mickey, always a regular contributor to the show, says, good morning, Drew and Cole. He also says the same thing to you, Ike. And I hope you enjoy how we're going to do this. We're going to start with the opening drive.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989. On two. Ready? Break.
Now, I know this is normally when we would recap the action that took place, whichever day they played, either that past Monday, that past Thursday, that past Saturday, or that past Sunday. However, since there's no games to review, we're going to have seasons to review for the next 4 weeks. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take two divisions and give them grades for this, the next, the following, and the next 4 weeks on the next Total Football Talk episodes on the opening drive. And on tap for this show, we're going to give grades to the AFC East and the NFC East. So we're going to begin with the AFC East and the New England Patriots. Now, all right, so they ended their season 4-13. They came into the season not really all that promising, and thoughts were of a rift between Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick, and it ended up happening as they split after the season was over, after a 24-year marriage of sorts, and they brought in Jared Mayo, who signed as an agreement he was going to replace Bill Belichick as head coach once it was going to happen, and 10 years later it did. But unfortunately, on the field, they suffered a Mac Jones regression. They suffered Bailey Zappi looking no better than he did the year before. And for the first time since 2015, they took, let me see if I can find the right way to describe this. Oh, yeah. For the first time in 8 years, they took an to the New York Jets. All right, so your thoughts on the Patriots season and what's to come?
You know, it was definitely the worst season out of all four teams in this league. In this division, I would say right here. With being 4-13 and looking at all three aspects of grading offense, special teams, defense here with New England Patriots, I'd have to give this team an F for failure. They failed. They absolutely failed. I'd love to drop an F-bomb, but we can't. We're a kid-friendly program when it comes to our language out here in these streams. But F for failure is what I'm aligning with this team right here. You had a coach who undoubtedly is going to be a Hall of Fame candidate at some point.
Yes.
No matter when they elect him, nominate him, so on and so forth. Okay. He's going in, regardless of how he's getting in, if he was carried by who. Okay. He still has 6 championships as a head coach. 8 altogether between his 2 as an assistant with his time with the Giants, team that we'll talk about here shortly during this coverage of the East divisions of the NFL today. But I would have to say, based on the downfall that's been going on since pretty much the year 2020 up until throughout the past season, looking at all three aspects of the New England Patriots team, I have to give them an F overall for effort and for grade between all three phases in offense, defense, and special teams.
Yeah, yeah, because there's many times during the year where you got a chance to see how hard this Patriots team regressed. I mean, they dare say they're 6 years removed from winning a Super Bowl, and they don't look like that team. I mean, it's horrible all across the board, and F is the proper grade that I would give every single aspect of the team. Dare say, for the exception of ownership, but but I think Robert Kraft was coasting, and he probably deserves an F for this year, his doggone self. But coming into the year, people were wanting to have Bill Belichick go, and I think it started there. And you had doubts at QB. You definitely had doubts with skill position players. I mean, the hype was, "Woo, we got Ezekiel Elliott." Really? Ezekiel Elliott is going to be on our backfield. That was the biggest hype for a skill position player that the Patriots had all year long.
I still look at his final play in Dallas.
Yes. Right. So he has a comical end to his Dallas stay, and he goes to a comedy of errors in Foxborough. And then the defense, sometimes they took turns playing like they were inspired, and then they had games like the 34-0 butt whooping that the Saints gave them in Foxborough. So it was just horrible all the way around. And now they're a team that they have a head coach, but I don't know if they have a quarterback. I don't know, because would you want to throw Mac Jones in there for the future? Because to me, I think you consider Mac Jones the same as you would Bailey Zappi. It's like we really don't have anything. And now we have to see if they evaluate talent differently now that Bill Belichick is gone. That I want to see.
Yeah, I don't think they have anybody on this team from when they won that last Super Bowl. I mean, looking back on the roster now, I couldn't remember if there was anybody that was still on the team, and unless you guys out there in the chat can recall anybody that was on this team back then when they won that last Super Bowl, I don't think so. And the sad thing is not enough time has passed that you would normally think that this team has been blown up and rebuild. Most of the time when you have a Super Bowl champion in that short amount of time, you still have members on the team that have signed long-term extensions or whatever.
Right.
That just goes to show how much turmoil was going on within this locker room. They've had to blow it up and make changes pretty much since the start of this past decade. So, new coaching in there. At some point within the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to have new ownership in New England because Robert Kraft is getting on up there, depending on if they keep it in the family or whatnot with Jonathan Kraft. But anyway, that the success might not be there like it was under Robert Kraft under the past past 3 decades. So we've seen it with the Raiders in transition with the Davis family with bowl cut. Can't quite get it done over there for the Raiders. So we could not be seeing very much success coming from New England for quite some time. And if you're a New England Patriots fan, it could be some sad times ahead.
Ooh. I can't disagree with anything you just said because, I think soon to come will be ownership changes because, I mean, Robert Kraft is not a young man. So you have that coming. And, which way are they going to go? The Raiders route where Al hands it down to Mark? Or will it be the Broncos where Pat Bowlen's like, I'm not going to have any of my children own this family. I'm going to put it out. I'm going to put it out for sale. And now it's under new ownership. So, Mr. Kraft has a few decisions to make in the next few years. One of the biggest ones he just made this past month. Sig Dickey, he says, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, all the way from Norway. Thank you for your vintage greeting. He says, let's not forget how the Patriots organization is quite cheap when it comes to contract negotiations. Haven't forgotten. I think that was also made even more possible by how penny pinching the general manager was. And of course, the general manager was the head coach as well, that being Mr. Belichick. But yes, the guy who signs the checks had to sign off on that too. So, probably something that Robert Kraft was saying. Oh, and Six says, for some reason, I can imagine Cole driving a 72 deuce in the quarter while bumping One Way's Cutie Pie. You're the reason why I love you so. I'm not gonna let you go. You're the girl who makes me feel so good. Cutie Pie. Oh Lord, why did you have to bring that song into my purview, Sick? I wasn't even thinking about that song until you mentioned it.
Between the ad reads and then this, Sick is going to bring some randomness at some point during the program.
Yeah, you're right about that. Now, going down I-95 a bit from the Boston area to Jersey or New York. We're going to revisit there, of course, later on in the hour. The Jets, they finished the season 7-10. It's the same record as 2022. They finished 7-10 this past year too. Breece Hall was the only bright spot really on the team, as head coach Robert Saleh had no idea what to really do with the franchise once Aaron Rodgers went down 4 games into their season. And it just derailed the rest of it. Oh, but then there was some continuity. I mean, we saw the same old Zach Wilson. Oh, that's not a good thing. Your thoughts on the Jets?
I will not be going as hard on them as I did with the New England Patriots, but I will also be harder on them than I would say some other teams. Then they will be grading at some point within the next couple weeks. When it comes to the New York Jets, 7-10, not really an improvement from the year before. And you also got to look under center, like you said, who they had at quarterback was Zach Wilson. 4 plays into the season, Aaron Rodgers goes down, and it's not like with Kirk Cousins and the Vikings. He had played long enough to where even though they had 3 other quarterbacks play throughout the season, they still had a chance at the end of the year because Kirk Cousins was there long enough to get them enough wins to keep them relative, because they were hot when he got hurt. That's the sad part. And they were heating up when he got hurt.
Right.
Jets had no opportunity to heat up because they couldn't even get past the first drive of the NFL season with Rodgers. So when I think about all that, and the past team that we were just talking about, the fact that they lost to the Jets for the first time in 8 years, being the Patriots team we just covered,
right?
You got to look at the coaching from Robert Saleh here. I mean, you had a dumpster pelican at quarterback with Zach Wilson, but the coaching, and he did well, and primarily on defense. The defense is what carried them to those 7 wins. And back in the day, 7-9 was a little bit more respectable than what 7-10 now is. But when you look at the overall core of the weapons that the Jets had for this season, for them to finish 7-10 with their starting quarterback of the stature that Aaron Rodgers is, for them to finish 7-10 is pretty remarkable, Cole. I can't give them, based on the defense, the coaching alone. They were so close to having a positive record. In some eyes, I might be ranking them a little bit high according to others, but I'm going to give them a C- is what I'm going to give them for this past season. And had they had Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, the offense would have produced a lot better. But regardless if he went down after 4 plays into the season or not, he was still going to have struggles because that offensive line has been playing like absolute garbage for the past few seasons. Now, if they make some additions this offseason via the draft, trades, free agency, we could see something special building over here in New York, but they're going to have to do it quick because Aaron Rodgers, now 40 years old, you got 1 guaranteed season from him this upcoming season. If it's it can't get much more worse than, in my opinion, than what he had for this past season. He goes 5 plays into this next season. He had an improvement. Okay. So if we look at it that way, it can't get much worse for Aaron Rodgers. Now, if the Jets, don't do any better than 7-10 this season with Aaron Rodgers, my opinion, it's over. They're going to have to completely restart it all like they were going to have to do before this past season when they were thinking about moving on past Zach Wilson. So right here, based on the defense, very similar to what we got over there in Cleveland, where the defense carried them to the playoff position that they got to this past season with a quarterback that just came off the couch. The Jets can do that in a similar fashion if they make some improvements to this offensive line and get another weapon or two when it comes to receivers, because he's got to have somebody to throw the ball to. But based on the way that Aaron Rodgers bounced back, I think that the 2024 season will be a very big improvement. But based on the way the defense and some of what special teams did for the New York Jets, I'm going to go ahead and give them a C- for the 2023 season.
Yeah, I actually have to give them. That's a really good grade, because I was thinking, if you take it at face value, you would say it's probably a D. But you have to understand that this team played as if they were going to have Aaron Rodgers for the season going into it, and then starting the very second possession of the year for the offense for the Jets, it wasn't him, and it wasn't going to be him the rest of the year. So they were basically in mash and recovery mode, and considering all of that considered, yes, I do agree with you. Saleh has his hand on the defense. Of course, that's his specialty. And there was some down times to how his defense played, but for the most part, his defense was up to the challenge. It was just that the offense just didn't know what to do. Other than probably run Breece Hall at certain moments, they really didn't know. I mean, they trotted out different quarterbacks outside of Zach Wilson, and it just still didn't happen for them. But credit to the Jets. They fought hard, they fought valiantly. And I'll say this, though, and I don't really wish injury on anybody, even Aaron Rodgers. I don't wish injury on him at all. But if one thing was to be positive from his injury, it would be they got a chance to see, wow, this offensive line that we were going into 2023 with, not quite so good. Maybe we need to retool it and get better for the next year when Rodgers comes back. So if there's going to be any silver lining for that season, I would say that is your silver lining. Hopefully it will be, and we'll get a chance to see a better team under the leadership of Aaron Rodgers. But who knows?
And I think that Dalvin Cook going to the Ravens actually helped me give them a little bit better of a grade, because had we talked about this 4 to 6 weeks ago, I probably would have given them a little bit of a harder time because of the fact that they actually did have Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall. But then when I think about it all, based on the fact of how Aaron Rodgers got hurt and they couldn't get that running game going, it
Right.
all stems from that offensive line. It's something that we've known about going into this past season. So I'm not going to punish the running game based on that. Like, you had talent back there, but I'm going to chalk that up based on had they had improved the offensive line in this past offseason. I think that we would have seen better results from that. Dalvin Cook would still be a New York Jet, and they would probably be at least 8-9, if not 9-8. With all that being said, and Aaron Rodgers probably wouldn't have gotten hurt to begin with.
I agree. 100% agree with that. Mickey says, please stop the singing, Cole, please.
What?
Oh, that means you want me to sing more. Thank you, Mickey. I appreciate that. Ike says, let him sing. Thank you, Ike.
Yeah, even with what Ike said, I got to throw a little bit of... Yeah. Let him sing.
Thank you. Six says, what's a show without Cole singing a few bars? Oh, well, thank you, sir. He also says, I can't believe you discussed the Jets without our own Ryan McCarthy in the chat. Well, I'm surprised. And if you are hearing or within earshot, Mr. McCarthy, please come on into the chat. We had wonderful things to say about your Jets. And I even tried not to throw Aaron Rodgers under the bus while doing so. See, so I was on my good behavior.
It's nicer than another team we'll be talking about here in a little bit.
Oh, you darn right. St. Dicky says, this review of the New York Jets is brought to you by Bum Leg Orthopedic, brand new ankle brace and ankle boot. The only thing keeping Aaron Rodgers' hopes alive for next season. That's Bum Leg Orthopedics, folks. Oh, my leg, oh, my leg, oh, my leg, oh, my leg. How you doing, my man, Vicola? Or V like A3 or Victor Lockie says, good morning, TFT tribe, especially to the EP of all EPs, Cole Johnson, and the big game hunter of Dustin Pelicans worldwide, Sensei Drew Willingham. I bow to you, gentlemen, and we bow to you too, sir. It is good to see the Ed McMahon of the Snowman in the Morning program come on. It's good to see you. Good to see all of you. And yeah, I totally agree. I think if they can retool that offensive line, I think the Jets will be better off because they do have decent pieces at wide receiver. I mean, you had Alan Lazard, and you had, I don't know where they found Randall Cobb. I thought he was about to retire. And of course, you had the previous, not this year, but last year's Rookie of the Year in Garrett Wilson. So they have pieces. Now they may need to find maybe a couple more pieces to round out the skill position players and build that offensive line because the defense is fine. I don't think they have to really do anything defensively.
And the sad thing was, I at least will have to throw some more shade at them. Like, you had McCole Hardman who just caught a Super Bowl winning touchdown, and you couldn't utilize him.
Couldn't use him
like the Chiefs do. It just goes to show that there are certain systems that certain guys fall into.
Yeah.
And he definitely fits well with Andy Reid and the Chiefs system over there. So if McCole Hardman's smart, he'll re-sign with the Chiefs for this upcoming season to try to three-peat. But when it comes to the Jets, you at least had that weapon at your disposal along with Dalvin Cook. And I think that's a bigger blow to not work out than Dalvin Cook, to be honest, because of what just happened after you let him go. Because both of them went to two good teams that happened to face off against each other for the AFC Championship to go to the Super Bowl. And one of them happened to be the difference maker in the Super Bowl. So,
one of them made the game-winning play in it. So,
relatively, I would say relatively quiet throughout the majority of that game. But when it mattered the most, he made the biggest catch of the day and his career in Super Bowl 58.
Yeah. Shout out to you, McCole. Not only give you the game winning, but the longest play in that Super Bowl too. So I mean, he, as bit of a piece as you might think, he came up big in the moments that he had to come up big. All I can do is just tip my cap to you. And to the Jets, ouch, that hurt. Now I'm glad I actually said that hurts. To a team that I think in the beginning it was great, but the end really smarted. And that's the Miami Dolphins. They were cruising, and I mean cruising the AFC East. I mean, they actually had a hold of the number 1 seed at one time, but they ended up being the number 6 AFC playoff seed. Now they came to the season a little banged up because Jalen Ramsey hurt himself in preseason, but he returned midseason and did okay. Didn't do great, but he didn't do bad. The defense sort of rounded into shape. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. But they were the unit that you basically forgot about and didn't really think much about because it was all about the offense. The thought also was, would Tua Tagovailoa would stay healthy and find his way to not be in that tent to check for a concussion. Thankfully, he did not suffer one this year. And Tyreek Hill, who was on his way to becoming the receiver to have the most yards in a singular season, torrid start, but cooled off faster than the Arctic Circle in December. And this team, and I did mention that they controlled the AFC East, they held the lead the entire year until week 18 when they took an L to the Bills. Oh, I'm sorry, I did that wrong. Yeah. A hot Miami January night. All they had to do was win. They'd be the number 2 seed, but they took an and then they took another the very next week, going to KC under what was it 4 below 0 temperatures. Of course, they just got finished playing again the week before where it was 70 degrees. But yes, a frigid temperature game for them. They got beat by the eventual world champs, the eventual back-to-back world champs, the new dynasty in the NFL, the Chiefs, 26-7. All right, what do you grade the Dolphins, sir?
You know, the season was one of the best ones to watch, I'd say, throughout the first 10 to 12 weeks. It was definitely a hot season because even when you look at the way that it ended, the Dolphins ranked first in the NFL in offensive yards, 401.3 yards per game, sixth in rushing yards with 135.8, first in yards per carry, 5.1, second in red zone efficiency at 65.5%, and second in scoring offense at 29.2 points per game. All that being said, those are stellar numbers for any team throughout the majority of before a 16-game season, now a 17-game season. And, you know, with all that chasing of records, instead of pacing yourself, you kind of screwed yourself for a playoff run right there because for, 3/4 of the season, they were chasing a receiving record, a receiving yards record, or offensive production stats, overall. So when I think about that, had it ended in a great fashion, whether it be a Super Bowl or at least the number 1 seed, because we're going overall season, which a big portion of that is regular season, for them to go from a 1 seed, which is a seed that we saw for many weeks and thought they were going to be to end the season, to have the downfall that they did in the last 4 to 6 weeks of the season to go from 1 to 6, I would have to give them, and to try to be fair based on the production they had that first 3/4 of the season, I'd have to give the Dolphins a B- for this season because you have to give them the credit for what they did the first 3/4 of the season, right? You can't completely take away from that. But I still have to grade based on the outcome of how the season at hand was. And to go from a 1 to 6, you still made the playoffs. So I still feel like you deserve to be up there with a grading, but you shouldn't be. I was kind of tossing and turning a little bit. Should I give him a B? Should I give him a B-? Definitely wasn't going to be a B+. But a B- I feel like is a safe pick here because Yeah, they had a great season overall, and they deserve their praise on the defense and the offense, primarily on the offense, because the numbers they were putting up were stupid, like Madden video games stupid, the first 3 quarters of the season, especially that one game against the Broncos that we're not going to talk about right now. But when I think about the production that you got out of the Dolphins during that time, and then with the downfall, to try to meet in the middle with some type of median and some type of positivity from it, I got to give them a B- and say they definitely have something great to build on for next year. Let's just hope that they don't completely fall on their face. But I like what I'm seeing offensively. I think that when we get to the playoffs, Tua definitely learned some lessons to help,
Oh, yes, he did.
to get him ready and mentally prepare a little bit better for the next go around.
Yeah.
But I feel like they need a few more pieces on the defense to help out, especially in that secondary over there. But the offense, you don't need to tweak that much. You guys have got something good. You just need to remain consistent over there in Miami. But B- is the grade I'm going to give the Miami Dolphins on this day.
Yeah. I do like the fact that offense is balanced. I think that's the one thing I like about that you would think because I called them basically the fast break, the fast break in football. They want to spread you out and just run. And I don't necessarily mean run and carry. I just mean they just want to run the defense ragged. And I love the fact that even though they do have the ability to strike deep and throw the ball as often as possible, they want to run it too. And that is going to take them far. That's going to help out the defense, and it helped out the defense for much of the year. But of course, the problem was when they couldn't really get that running game going, the defense was a bit exposed, like you just mentioned, and they would give up 48 points to a team like the Bills, where they weren't really cooking really until they met up with them. And I'm not talking about, of course, the last game of the year. I'm talking about when they went to Orchard Park in October. So when you have those types of outputs and it's up and down, and the consistency isn't there all the way around, B- is a really good grade, because they were hovering at the number 1 spot, no worse than number 2. I mean they were competing with the Jags at one point. They were of course competing with the Ravens at one point. They were competing with the Chiefs, and all the while they were consistent. They were consistent at 2 or 1 for a good while until the Ravens actually really caught fire, and we'll of course talk about them in another time. And they took it on home, and the Dolphins decided to just fall off the face of the earth in terms of football parlance. If they also get a pass rusher, I would like that too. And I think they need to have a strong defensive leader. They need to have a strong middle linebacker that can galvanize that defense and have them be pointed in that one unit direction. I don't think they have that quite yet, because they got dynamic pieces, Xavier Howard, of course, and Jalen Ramsey, but and even pieces that are unheralded like Andrew Van Ginkel, but they just need to have more solidification on defense, like they actually have on offense. And if they were to have that, I think the Dolphins will be something to handle, and they might make South Beach happy when they last win the Super Bowl. Who knows? But B- is a really good grade. I think that's on point with the Dolphins this year. It's unfortunate.
Had they remained consistent, and I would have given them a little bit of a better grade, because you and I were having fun covering that team for that during that stretch. I mean, talking about the video game numbers, especially about how Russell Wilson or Sean Payton should be axed after that huge deficit that they faced early on in the season. I mean, we were ready to see heads roll after that game. So looking back on how much impact that game, let alone had on both teams throughout the rest of the season, I mean, it kind of, in a way, elevated the Broncos to play better from that point forward. We never saw them or another team lose in that fashion again for the rest of the season. But then I feel like it might have made the heads get a little bit too big on the Dolphins players, to where by the end of the season they got humbled a little bit. Of course, Tyreek Hill got what was it, his ankle got banged up or something?
Yeah.
I couldn't remember exactly. Like it was his ankle, and then he was out for a little bit, so of course he couldn't get the record. So then they had to play a little bit smarter. You kind of limped into the playoffs, being the Miami Dolphins,
literally.
And with McDaniel being a young coach, you learn some lessons in this season. Yeah, it's fun to put up 70 points in a game. It's fun to go record chasing, but the biggest thing you need to be chasing is rings.
Yeah. Could not say it better. In fact, that's the cherry in the sunny with that one. Now we get to the AFC East champion Bills, and we did not think we were going to say that on Thanksgiving. Yes, that's right. That's right. The reason being, well, after that disappointing 37-34 L they took in Philly, they were 6-6, and they were at the time the 11th seed. And unfortunately, after that game, Ken Dorsey, the offensive coordinator, got the boot, which made my brother happy for some odd, strange reason. But then the Bills decided to actually hitch their wagon. We talked about Dalvin Cook. His younger brother James actually totaled the rock a little more, and they ran the table, going 5-0 the rest of the way to end the regular season. And along that journey after that, they got the number 2 seed, of course, beating the Dolphins in Miami to get that number 2 seed and the AFC East championship. They defeated the Steelers in the wildcard round, 31-17. The game wasn't that close. They started off 21-0 early in the second quarter, and of course, this was after much of the country was buried in snow, and so were they, and because they dug Rich Stadium out of snow. And then we get to another wide right game. Yes, I know we're not talking about Super Bowl 25. No. We're talking about the AFC divisional round game in 2023 season that they played against the Chiefs, where they lost again to them, this time 27-24. Your thoughts on the Bills 2023 season, sir?
Well, once you mentioned the name Ken Dorsey, you should have known that this was going to go. As it did for them, leading up to the point when they released him or relieved him of his duties because of how terrible of a quarterback he was early on in his career, becoming a coach and then doing the things that he did over in Buffalo. Now, he wasn't a complete dumpster Pelican coach, okay, but they were playing like dumpster Pelicans, as you said in that moment, that they were the 11th ranked team in the NFL, a team with a ranking that's way too low for their standards based on what they have for talent at the wide receiver 1 position, at the QB 1 position, hell, at the running back 1 position. They've got weapons over there on the offensive side of the football. Now, defensively, I would say they have some strong weapons too. You got to look at what Von Miller has done in his tenure throughout his career and the leadership role that he can provide over there on the defensive side. But, looking at how things were the first half of the season, they were struggling. I don't know if it was a chemistry thing with Ken Dorsey, because once he was out of there, they must have heard what I was saying, because it's like you said, I may have had some infatuation with the release and the relieving of duties for one Ken Dorsey. But look at what they did from that point forward.
Yeah.
They went from the 11th seed, Cole, which is not a seed in the NFL, but they went from an 11th ranked in the NFL to the number 2 seed in the AFC. So obviously getting rid of the dumpster Pelican of quarterback coaching, Ken Dorsey, the offensive coordinator, non-genius Ken Dorsey, you improved your team to where you could go and be the 2nd seed of the AFC. Now, did you go but so far it seemed like it was close, but it was yet so far away for the Bills. Once they got to the playoffs, okay. Yes, DeMar Hamlin was a great turnaround story with what happened last year. Nothing but well wishes there. Glad that he was able to get back on the field, but also very glad they didn't give him the Comeback Player of the Year award because he didn't play. He didn't hardly play. So some people have been throwing jabs out there saying, "Oh, he should have got it because he was faced near death and then came on back down the field." Yeah, but he was there for some special teams plays and sniffed a few plays on defense. Didn't really actually have a huge impact to the team like Joe Flacco did as the Comeback Player of the Year, because he actually got in there and made a difference towards whether they won or lost in the game. So, and primarily won. He won more games than lost when it came to Joe Flacco. So you got to give the man his flowers for what he did. Now, back here with the Buffalo Bills, thinking on their grade, it would have been considerably lower at the time that I went on my rant about Ken Dorsey during Total Football Talk back when he was relieved of his duties during the season. But based on the fact that they went from the 11th seed at that time, like you said, to the number 2 seed, having the bounce back time from when they were taking those. I gotta rank them similarly to the Miami Dolphins in this retrospect, because where the Dolphins would have been like a higher grade as an A, or so before they went on their downfall, the Bills were reversed. I would have ranked them lower because before they had progressed from their regression. So I think based on the fact that they got to the playoffs as a 2 seed without their planned offensive coordinator from the start of the season, and who they had for years up until that point, developing Josh Allen, developing this offense, improving. I'm going to give the Buffalo Bills a grade of a B- to go from an 11th seed to the 2 seed in the AFC and of the AFC East, especially to be a dog in the AFC East when you had other teams looming over you from years past. I'm gonna give the Buffalo Bills this year as a B-.
Okay, B-. I'll give them a B. If it was possible that I can give them like half a minus, I would do that. I'd give them a B, but I'd give them the lowest B that I could possibly give them. That's not a B-. Because I am not the biggest Sean McDermott fan. I really do believe, for those who don't know, he's the head coach of the team. But for some reason, they don't, the players, don't seem to really be galvanized with this guy. He may know the X's and O's. I won't say he's the bright defensive mind. He has some solid defensive acumen to him, but I just don't think this guy is the leader of men, so to speak. And I really believe you have this team that they're getting by on their talent. And I don't know if they are a collective unit. And the reason why I say that is, of course, you got Stephon Diggs, who was taking shots at the team during last offseason. And all throughout that offseason, you had him, not necessarily directly at McDermott, but was taking shots sort of near him. And then even taking a couple shots at Josh Allen. And then on top of it, in the regular season, and we'll talk about him in a minute, in the midst of him, I guess, wanting to get entertainment, Trayvon, his younger brother, said something to the effect that you wonder why, I'm just paraphrasing, you wonder why number 14 of the Bills is unhappy. So you have that within your team, this turmoil, this chaos that's on your team. And credit Josh Allen trying to steady the ship, but unfortunately higher than him is not steady enough. And I think we saw that. Defensively, they have great pieces. Offensively, they have great pieces, but I don't feel continuity with them. And it's unfortunate with a team that talented, that's what they need, and they seem to lack a lot of it. And it you have, and I will continue to bang this drum about the Bills. So you have this team, they have put you out the playoffs 2 out the last 3 years. You have said, okay, well, if we get a chance to play them in our crib, it will be different. So you had them in the AFC Championship game 3 years back, but you lose by 2 touchdowns. 2 years later, you played the Classic that changed the overtime rules. And of course, in this grade, we'll talk about that later. And so you had this, and you had your mouth all tuned up for hash because you thought you was going to see them last year in the AFC Championship game. You looked so far ahead, you forgot the Bengals actually existed. They just ran you out of Western New York, literally. And then this year, you get them at home. So my thought is, okay, you need to not motivate any longer. It's like, okay, this team has put you out the playoffs. They have been your nemesis. Yes, you have gotten them in the regular season, but you never got them in the postseason. And then they clown you in your house. And to me, that is what makes this a B at the lowest for me. Otherwise, I would give them an A, considering that they were 6-6, and then they sprinted their way to a number 2 seed. But yeah, that disappoints me.
I was wrestling with giving them a B or a B minus just based on what Miami did for the majority of the season before they had the downfall over the last month or so. Mm-hmm. I couldn't quite rank them higher than that based on the production that the Dolphins had all the way through the year up until that point. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's why for me, thinking about it last night, going back and forth on it, I was like, I'll at least keep them with the B minus.
Yeah. Believe me, I want to actually say like be half a minus. That's really what I wanted to say. And the reason why I grade them higher than the Dolphins is because they swept the season series against them. Otherwise, I probably would have them in the same grade too. But I'm not going to poo-poo you putting them in the same grade, because the same outcome happened, although the Bills left the proceedings 1 week later.
Also, a quick shout out to Dante. Saw him over there in the chat. Yeah. We're covering the East divisions of the NFL today as part of our Total Football Talk opening coverage, where we got the AFC East and we're going to the NFC East. So we got some teams you'll want to hear about here upcoming very soon.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And what's up to you, Dante? I'm going to get to your message, your other message later, because you'll see why. But we're going to get to it. I'm glad you're here, brother. It's good to see you. Eagles fan extraordinaire, if you all don't know. He's probably going to hate what we have to say about the Eagles, not because of what we're saying, but because of how the season went. But he's going to love other things too, though. Victor says, man, his week has been good. My mentality, brother, our brother, Wise El Jefe. Good morning, he says. Good morning to you, and many praise to you, my man. You know why.
Been thinking of you this past week, there, Wise El Jefe. Definitely glad that saw you on your podcast yesterday and got in there yesterday for a few comments. Glad that you're still keeping the head up there, brother, and keep on grinding, doing the things that you can out here in these streets to make those proud of you that we wish could be here to watch what we're doing out here these days.
Yeah, and I have no problem saying this. Yes, I'm full-fledged man. I love you, brother. I have no problem saying that. Dante says, look, it's tough to judge the AFC because they're stacked with quarterbacks and talent. It's definitely the harder path. Yeah, because the Chiefs are now the kings of the hill, I think that's what you're seeing. I think you're seeing a lot of teams want to basically pattern themselves after them. And yeah, it is becoming a harder road to toe because you got really good quarterbacks in that conference.
I'm looking forward to revisiting the one that you were talking about revisiting
I am
from
too.
him.
Oh, I am too.
Because now that you put that one up there, I know exactly where you're going with that. So looking forward to covering that too. But yes, Tate's throwing gems out there in the chat.
He is.
This morning.
He is.
I love it.
He is, because he says, look, if the Eagles had Josh Allen, we are in the Super Bowl. That's how bad Hurts was at the end of last year. We're going to touch on that in a few minutes. But the AFC East, look, as a whole, I'd probably give that division maybe a C. And the reason why I would is, yeah, you could say the Patriots weigh the division down. But it's not even because of that. To me, it's because of the top two teams.
Yep.
The Dolphins and the Bills both. Well, the Bills had high expectations coming into the season. The Dolphins, they drummed up high expectations during the season, and I think they both were underwhelming at the end of it. Otherwise, yeah, it was a competitive season just between those two, and of course the Jets. It was supposed to be better for them, but of course the Aaron Rodgers injury messed all of that up.
I 1000% agree with you, because based on that ranking, had a team within this division gone further in the playoffs,
yes,
then we could rank it higher. But based on the fact that both of these teams got eliminated fairly early in the playoffs,
yeah.
I 1000% agree with your ranking here for the overall division. Because to have a team like the Dolphins where they were throughout the entire season and you get ousted the way that you did, and then of course the Bills, with where they were at throughout the year, lucky to get to a 2 seed, but still they still have great talent over there. I would have expected them to be a little bit further along.
Yeah.
Before the season started, I was saying AFC Championship at least to the game.
I was
not necessarily Super Bowl, but with all that being said, even though the overall picture they underwhelmingly performed because they didn't get to that point, they still made some progressions based on how the season started. And then the Dolphins did the whole 180. So because of the up and down roller coasterness, I'd have to say you were spot on with your pick right there for the division.
Appreciate that. And now we get to the NFC East, and this will probably be the portion of the program where I will try to find earbuds and earplugs, because we're about to talk about the Washington Commanders. Now, coming into the season, there was some optimism because gone was Daniel Snyder, and in came Josh Harris and his ownership group that had Magic Johnson on it. And then you had a new offensive coordinator / assistant head coach in Eric Bienemy. He had to prove something after being on a successful team like the Chiefs, but was getting no love or consideration on having any input on the team. He was going to have all the input possible, and he had it for one season. Midway through the season, they saw the writing on the wall, and they saw the season was going. They traded away Montez Sweat and Chase Young. And then at the end of the season, they fired Ron Rivera. And they replaced it with Dan Quinn. Oh, no, by the way, they decided to hire Cliff Kingsbury for offensive coordinator. But there was one problem. They forgot to tell Eric Bienemy. Oh, good Lord. Your thoughts on your beloved Commanders, sir?
I have to do the best I can to not give an emotional take on this actual pick right here because of what we've witnessed with this franchise for the better part of the past 30 years, even further than this past season alone. There were some positive parts to this season as far as we had new ownership and for the franchise. The huge dark cloud that was over this franchise began to go away, to lighten up. Instead of being so dark and bleak, we had some gray clouds. It was still cloudy.
There you go.
I mean, it's still cloudy over there. It's the positive part that you can look to. But besides all that, this season went. When you look at it overall as a whole, did you improve from 2022 to 2023? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
this Washington franchise, they went from 2022 in the 10-year with Dan Snyder looking overall for a sale, and basically had this guy come in to say this beforehand.
Stop it. Get some help.
So they go and get that help by
Yes.
bringing in Josh Harris and the Magic Johnson ownership group. And, they come in, they start off at the local bar, giving out free beverages to the fans and trying to hype things up, get everybody excited about this change in ownership. And to be honest, from that point forward, that was probably the peak of the excitement for this team, because this team played so bad, Cole Johnson. I mean, so bad throughout this season that they were the second-ranked team on this list right here of dumpster Pelicans to play in the NFL. The second, again, they were the second-ranked dumpster Pelican on this list, standing on that Food Lion bag with the right on top of it. That is who they were. They were that dumpster Pelican right there, okay? We can get offense, defense, and special teams. The entire trifecta of how we grade a franchise. The talent that you had on defense prior to the trading of Chase Young and Montez Sweat to be producing the negative production that you were at that point with that talent on the team, and still you only had mustered 4 wins up until the point that you had traded them away. Like, we saw one of the biggest displays of inept performance throughout the second half of this season, because they started off winning their first 4 of their first 9 games. I think they won 4 of their first 9 games. They were like 4-5 at that point, because they had a bye later on in the season. So they were like, it started off like 4-5, pretty respectable for me at that point. I was still thinking they were going to have a decent season, at least finish like the Jets, like 7-10. I would have been happy with that had they had 7 wins, because that was around what I was predicting. I was like, I'll be okay and can accept a 7-10 season. I'm hoping for 8-9. I was saying that last offseason. I was putting maybe a little bit too much hype on Sam Howell, and considering he did do fairly decent in my opinion.
He did
with what he had, because and
there you go.
Terry McLaurin was his number 1 weapon, okay, and practically his only weapon.
Yeah,
so for him,
that's just number 1.
For him to get the production from Terry McLaurin, I would say for Terry McLaurin to get that type of production with everything that Sam Howell had going on as a second-year quarterback was great for him. But for Sam to get those type of numbers by spreading the ball out to other no-name receivers and still getting some production out of that in a 4-win season, I have to give him props for that. I don't want to completely throw all the shade on this team, because I'm going to primarily focus in 2 avenues. One, kind of like how I did with the Jets, the offensive line is absolutely terrible. And even though some of you are probably going to be looking at this, well, Sam Howell had like the 19th best offensive line or whatever in the National Football League, so he should have done better based on those statistics alone. When somebody told me that, I still got to figure out how they got the statistic anyway. Okay, for one, that was back in December when I heard that. So maybe they're the 17th best or the 21st best. I don't know, because that was like mid-December, and I'm going to find out what it was and where it was. We'll circle back to that. But what I will say, based on the offensive line and their defense, because a lot of that was spearheaded from Jack Del Rio as their head coach. I mean, not their head coach, but their head defensive coordinator, who was a head coach, still has the mindset of both and can pull it off. So he was the head coach of the defense, like you said, defensive coordinator, getting fired during the season around Thanksgiving. All this turmoil is going on, letting him out of there. He'd been there for 3.5 seasons, and that was a roller coaster ride as well. And there was no improvement throughout this, final season in Washington. So he was the scapegoat at that point. So looking at the offensive line, looking at the defense as a whole, especially how strong that defensive line should be based on having Sweat and Chase Young and You know, Chase Young kind of got exposed a little bit throughout his tenure with the 49ers of maybe he was worth that third-round pick, you know, when it came to the value of that. But they got cheated when it came to Montez Sweat based on the fact they gave him up for a second-round pick and what he did for the remainder of the season in Chicago. Also getting a much-deserved contract extension because of what he did. He was the sack leader for both the Commanders and the Bears for this season. So giving him his flowers while we can. And, you know, they would probably have a worse ranking from me had he not been on the team this year. So because of Montez Sweat's impact on those 4 wins, because I don't think the Commanders would have won those 4 wins without Montez Sweat. Looking back on that as a whole, I can't rank them as bad as the Patriots, even though technically on paper they have the same record. I think the Commanders had some more positive moments throughout the 2023 season than the Patriots did. It was like I could stand watching games for the Commanders throughout the first 4 to 6 to 7 to 8 weeks. I watched all of them, but I could actually stand to watch the first 2 months of games because at least they were in it when they were losing. I think the one game they got really treated like dumpster Pelicans was against the Cardinals when Dobbs was still there. So when I look back on it and grade it the way that I think about everything as a whole, like I just said, offense, defense, special teams, the fact of the production they got out of Montez Sweat while he was still there in those 4 wins, I'm going to give him a D. Not a D+, not a D-, and not an F like I did with the Patriots. I'm going to give them a D because I feel like with the right moves this offseason, they have the potential. I'm not saying they're going to, because every time I say that they're going to, I get shot in the foot. But I'm going to say they have the potential to turn this thing around really quickly. And for reasons that we'll talk about later in the show with other things that we have on tap for our topics, because, you know, looking at what Cliff Kingsbury, you know, and all that stuff it's you know, going to make differences in this team right here. You got a new offensive coordinator. You ousted Eric Bienemy. Eric Bienemy acted like he didn't really care about it, but at the same time, when it comes to being the new changes for this season, we're talking about 2023. 2024 is going to have some bright spots and some bright potential for it. But looking at 2023, I can't grade the Commanders as low as the Patriots because I feel like, and this isn't just as a fan of the team, I feel like there's more hope for that franchise now than the Patriots based on when they were at their low points of 2023. I still didn't look at them as low as I did the Patriots when it came to the Commanders versus the Patriots. They may have a better draft pick for this draft, but in my opinion, they had a better season than the Patriots did.
Well, I'll give them a D-. It was going to be a D until they decided to bungle how they did not tell Bienemy that he no longer was the head OC and the assistant head coach, that he had to find out through the media that he was being replaced. I was like, okay, so we're probably seeing some mismanagement, but only in a different manner. And I'm not saying, I'm saying this as a question mark, not an exclamation point, because we saw mismanagement all over the place with Daniel Snyder. That's a straight up exclamation point with him. I'm hoping that it's not the case with the Josh Allen led group. I mean, Josh Harris led group. And I think it won't be because you got Magic Johnson on it. But they are better than the Patriots simply because you have hope in Sam Howell. Yes, I know he's sort of wet the bed in December, but you normally would if your season just goes into the tank because you don't fight as hard, you don't fight as much, and I mean that happens. And still he's young, still he's growing, and he's going to take his lumps. But I have a lot more hope for Sam Howell to be productive in the NFL than I do Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones. And just from that aspect and standpoint alone, the Commander season was far better than the Patriots. But yes, I know both finished at 4-13. I like that building block right there. Now they just need to build around them. And yes, you need to have something more than Terry McLaurin getting you 1,000 yards week 18. I'm not saying that he's bad. He's actually a good piece you could build around too. You just need other pieces. And you can't have that offensive line coming in the next year. You can't. I'm sorry. You just can't do that. And you got to be wise with the picks that you got for Sweat and Young, because you got to get pieces on defense too now.
And Dante absolutely crushed it with this take right here, with the Commanders of the biggest upside this offseason, as they're the only team without a QB on a extension. So they, in theory, can bring in a lot of salary cap casualties at the wide receiver, etc. position. Yes. And back to what you just said, Cole, about Terry McLaurin, they need to build around him. They need to do it right now, because if they don't do it right now, he's going to leave. Like, I'm telling you, this guy has seen way too much change in the short term that he's been here, between the change of the name, the pandemic, and all of the wild stuff that's come from that, not even mentioning the team itself. Okay, that's just outside the team. Then you got everything that just happened with this past season, the head coaching, the culture, so much has been changed. This guy needs to be in a positive situation. It needs to start now, and it needs to start with whatever weapons they bring in based on the salary cap that they have a lot to play with, and the draft. They've got a lot of draft capital. So besides the cap, they got draft capital. So you got the best of both worlds, $70+ million in cap room, plus all those draft picks. We could see something special brewing over there if they play their cards right. And we've also seen it to where teams have had this amount of capital on both sides, whether it be the draft or in salary cap, and screw up, like you said. So yes, in the next couple months, we're getting geared up and getting excited to start talking about the UFL here soon and start covering that. But I'm actually excited to not only cover that, but mixing it up with discussing what moves are made within these teams during the offseason, between the trades and free agency and with the draft, because this team right here that we're talking about, even though I'm grading it what it is, the D, and you saying a D- is, in your pick, I have a feeling that next year we could be grading them a little bit higher, but they had the potential for that big upside, like Dante said, but will they make their moves? We'll have to see in the next upcoming months.
I'm just hoping the team is motivated to build around McLaurin and Howe. And and of course you said he has seen a whole bunch of changes. How about a quarterback? So,
and I think that a hometown reunion, even though some people are saying that he was probably part of the demise in the playoffs of the Bills, I would say bring in Stephon Diggs as a wide receiver too. And I said that a couple of episodes ago with you and talked about how, because Stephon Diggs, it's like a hometown reunion for him. Okay, he's got family in the area. He's got family there. He'd be in the same division as his brother. Would get to go against him twice a year. There's a lot more incentive there. I feel like, with that being said, we could see something special there. Will it happen? Who knows? But at least something interesting for us to entertain between now and the end of the offseason.
Yeah. And and the free agency kicks in. Wow, in less than a month. Jeez, time flies. Wise says love you too. Thank you, brother. Appreciate that. Oh, Dante, Wise, who's a Giants fan, he says, look, Hurts is better than Daniel Wood-Nichols. Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
I mean, everybody can have a down year. I mean, and it's like you and I were talking about last week. Has made a clip out of it. How there were people saying that Jalen Hurts should have got the MVP over Mahomes last season.
Yeah, last year.
I mean, you got to look at that. At least he had that year, and he will get back to that. I think that part of that had to deal with, your coach's head got a little big. I would say it got a little big, especially when you're mouthing off for the fans and stuff. That at that point you need to sit in timeout. is what I was thinking when it came to your head coach. So cool heads prevail. I think that Jalen Hurts will be fine. Don't throw us so much shade. He had a down year based on what he did the year before. But, yeah, your coach needs to be in timeout. He's probably already served his timeout. He'll come out, change his Huggies, bring him on back out to the field, and he'll do a better job next season.
I hope so. And, of course, we'll talk a little bit more about the Eagles in a sec. Victor, for those who don't know, he's a Cowboys fan. When I mentioned NFC East, this is, oh, boy, this is going to hurt. No, it's not.
Yeah. Hey, if it was going to hurt, it would have stung a little bit with the past team we just talked about.
True. Why it says Bills are an early season beast, and once December, January rolls around, they suck rhino balls. Oh, and the comment that you have, we're getting to that next, sir. So stay tuned for that. Dante mentioned the better soft season, and I agree. He says, though, no to Diggs. But what about Devontae Adams? Or DK if you have the trade value. I'm loving Adams more than Diggs. And not that I'm hating on Diggs. I think I just like how Devontae Adams rolls in terms of how he plays offensively and as a wide receiver. I love his skill set a little better to me than Stephon Diggs. But
is DK talking about Dalton Kincaid, the tight end? Because they have two tight ends now practically because of when they drafted this past year. They had those two weapons this year.
Yeah, Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. I was going to say
Dawson Knox. Yeah, okay, that's who it was. Kincaid's a rookie.
Yeah, Dawson
okay.
Knox. Yeah, and it probably will move from Dawson Knox. Now that we mention it, that wouldn't be a bad pickup for Howell too, because I think that's also what he needs. He needs a safety valve. And you can't rely on DK Metcalf.
My bad.
I like him. I wish he ran routes a little better. Outside of that, I like him. The athletic skill is through the roof with him. He has good hands. He knows how to be explosive. He's getting better at route running. That's the only issue I have with him. And I think someone like Kingsbury would just make him a deep threat. And I think that would do him a disservice if that's the case. Victor says the Eagles are hurt by some bad play calls and the misuse of DeAndre Swift. Oh, we're going to touch on that too. If they ran the ball a bit better, they would have probably made it back to the NFC Championship games. Heck, if they ran it, they would have ran it back to the Super Bowl if that was the case. But Dante, warning, long comments coming from a very angry Eagles fan. Oh yeah. I'm sure, but we're not going to talk about the Eagles just yet because we're going to get to the Giants, and they finished their year 6-11. It basically was just this simple. They did not recover from that 40-0 butt thumping they took in the Meadowlands first Sunday of the season and on national television to the Cowboys. Daniel Jones got hurt midway through the season and basically was written out of the season. And he may not be a long-term answer because I keep hearing every week he could be trade bait for this team, trade bait for that team, trade bait for the other team. Same thing with Saquon Barkley. He also might be on the trading block because I keep hearing trade deals with him. And, of course, he's unhappy because they only gave him a one-year deal this past year after his rookie deal expired in the last offseason. But the hopes were pinned on Tommy, don't call me Tony DeVito. That is how bad the fortunes of the Giants went. But hey, but be happy though. Because the Giants swept the Commanders. Yes, we witnessed, that's why I said the Giants beat the Commanders twice last season. And that has a lot of reverberating personal effect with my partner / brother. Yeah. So yes, revel in the fact that your Giants wise swept the Commanders. Your thoughts of the Giants?
Well, first of all, we gotta pause that. Let's slow it down a little bit, Cole Johnson. Let's slow it down a little bit on this morning. Because you are preparing wise to unleash holy hell this morning on this Tuesday, okay? So you were like serving it up for him to do that, okay? Let's reel it back in. Let's remember where we are on this Tuesday morning. I was going to give the man flowers before you tried to set him up for throwing some shade because I loved his comment. I loved his comment when he said, "We them girls." We them girls.
I do too.
I love that part. And then I'm listening to Cole serve it up on a platter for Wise El Jefe to come in here and give me the for Ike and Wise and all of you out there who are New York Giants fans.
Let me talk to you.
With this, I'm going to go a little bit easier on your team because, one, you did beat the Commanders twice this past season. I'll at least give you that and throw this at you at the same time.
Acknowledge me.
I will acknowledge you for beating the Commanders twice this past season. I will also acknowledge my take of my prediction where I said you were going to go 1-7. Okay. However, I was only 2 games off. You're not much better. You were still 1-5 to start the season. So you can take your cookies and milk and go sit in the corner and eat them and with the crumbs all over your face and get excited. Okay. Because 1-5 start the season. Not that great. Not that great at all. And you what is trying to say, oh, we beat the Commanders twice? That's like going and dropping a deuce and not wiping. Okay. That's just as bad. So when you think about that, you cannot get but so excited about how your team did this past season. You guys finished 6-11. Now, of course, you could say, oh, yeah, that's better than 4-13 because your 2 wins that got you elevated above that 4-13 team came against that team. Yes. So congratulations for getting 6 victories over your team that you beat twice as 4. Okay, congratulations. I'm proud of you. I am really proud of you. And also really proud of you that you don't have this song either. Cole was not expecting me to play that button right there. He was very surprised because I didn't even know I was going to play it until about 4 seconds before I clicked the button. So when it comes to this situation right here, when it comes to the Giants, is I have, with this topic, gone completely. There's nothing. There's nothing about this team that really speaks enough volumes for me to point the finger at somebody and say, "You're fired." Because we have already discussed that situation with other teams previously in this take for the opening drive. The reason why you got the 6 victories was because of your coaching. You have a great head coach there. I believe in Dave.
Oh, yeah. Brian Daboll's awesome.
I would love to have him over there in Washington, but of course, we can't pry him over there from the rivals, so we'll just watch you have greatness over there in New York. But when it comes to this situation right here, when it comes to giving a grade on this team, based on my predictions for the 1-7 start and the fact that they were able to muster up 6 wins, I think the way that they ended the season, I have to be a little bit more fair to them than of my previous team that we just talked about. Like, I gave the Commanders a D. You gave them a D-. 2 wins more doesn't really garner but so much more of a grade. And I don't feel like they deserve a C though. I'm gonna rank them as a D plus. I was thinking more so along the lines of a C minus at first because of their coaching, because they wouldn't have had 6 wins with any other coach in the league because they need a lot more weapons on that team. Like they do not have as much of an upside for the offseason this year as like say the Commanders and other teams, because they don't have the salary cap or the flux at certain positions to make the moves like the Commanders and other teams do. So because of that, I can't rank them but so much differently when it comes to this situation right here. I'm going to give them a D plus based on the fact that they were 6-11 and they need to definitely do something with, like he said, Wood Nichols over there, quarterback, because it's not working out. Like, you were supposed to be handing the keys to the Porsche from Manning to Jones. In 2019, that was all we heard about when Eli wasn't good enough. And now you have Daniel Jones and what he's doing. Yeah, I'm giving him a D plus for this past season's performance.
I also say D. And I would have been harsher for the success of Brian Daboll and their defense, because although they lost 11 games, they were in a lot of them because their defense is pretty good. That offense is pretty atrocious. All the offense, the line, the skill position players, the QB, the running back core outside of Saquon Barkley, and he might be gone. I mean, the offense is horrendous now. It's just bad. And that's the only bright spot they have. If they do re-sign Barkley, it's him. That's the only bright spot, because unfortunately Darren Waller decided to be Bustarama. I don't understand it. The former Raiders tight end, now current Giants tight end, that contributed next to nothing for the team. And when you're, I'm sorry, Wise. When your best wide receiver is Darius Slayton. When your best wide receiver is Darius Slayton. Yes, except for 40-point thumping, yes. But they righted the ship, so to speak, though, Wise. But Wise, the Giants fan that he is, he says, F, the Giants get an F. I would go that far. Unfortunately, you beat a team that you just clowned my partner for twice, and they were worse.
Yeah, because I gave him a D. And Cole gave him a D minus, so we can't rank them worse. You had a better record, and you beat him twice. So it's like...
Oh, Lord. And then, he says, look, you were talking all that yang. He says, you gave yourself that L for that disrespectful prediction.
Hey, I'll admit it. I will sit up here. I can take my licks when I was wrong. Okay. I was right about 1-5, but I was wrong about 1-7. So those 2 wins, those 2 losses for the first 8 weeks that I was wrong about, I gave them back to you. You had the 2 wins against the Commanders. So there you go. Trade tit for tat. There you go.
Oh, Lord. And then you have sick. Milk and cookies, Drew. I might as well back up and tell you, buzz above, like Bernie Mac. You say what? I'm gonna get some milk and cookies. So I can't do that. Victor says that was not needed. And he was talking about the following was not needed. Poor Victor.
Delete! 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 Delete!
He was saying that wasn't needed. Oh my. But But look, I give him a D. And this team is Brian Daboll and a whole lot of really good defensive pieces that, like I was talking about, that the Bills don't have. Seemingly, the Giants defense does have it. They have continuity. They have cohesion. They have pride. They want to play together. And yeah, we could point to that 40-point thumping that they took at home to the Cowboys to begin the season. They thumped the next team we're talking about at home to end it. So there you have it, sir. Oh, sorry. Victor says, ladies and gentlemen, please face palm and groan as we listen to the national anthem of the Moronic Republic of Cowboys Nation as sung by Tyrese Cisco McKnight. Night.
Delete! Yeah!
Oh.
Yeah, take that, Tyrese.
Oh, and sick. Ike loves this. He says he got me on the floor with them milk and cookies.
You got him so jacked up. He put a period after and in between milk and cookies. That's how jacked up Ike was. Throwing those laughing emojis.
Oh,
yes,
my.
you got me.
Gosh.
I got myself screwed up with the milk and cookies on that one too. We're all screwed up on that one. That was great.
Yeah, it was. Victor says I was going to give the Giants D+ or C- for the as well. Yeah, look, to me, my grade also comes with they had better. I think they had expectations of being better because they were 10-7 the year before. They got into the playoffs and actually beat the Vikings in the wild card round. So they got to the divisional round last year. So we figured we were going to see something, maybe not necessarily the same, but probably something close to it this year, and they gave you nothing. But to me, Victor says, thank you, Matt Hardy. Yes, thank you. Yeah. But they fell short, unfortunately, and hopefully they can rebuild. But that offense is horrible. I don't care where you look. That offense is bad. I mean, it is really bad. But the good news is that's Brian Daboll's specialty, his offense. So hopefully he can retool, get this better, and then they can be better. But we shall see. Oh, Lord. Not where's Jim Nicholson?
Are you talking about Jack Nicholson?
You can't handle the truth!
I was like, who's Jim Nicholson? And then when you put it up there, I was like,
I was thinking that too. I was like, I'm thinking like it's being a Jack, but I'll just put it up there anyway. But yeah, that's just the truth, though. It is. But moving on. Oh yes, like I said, 40-0 thumping that the Giants took to begin the season. But what was it, 27-10? A thumping that you gave the next team we're talking about in week 18. Well, it looks like we're talking about possible improvement because the defense is all that the Giants can hang their hat on. But the 11-6 Eagles, they did finish the number 5 seed in the NFC. They had a lot of things they were hanging their hats on, and all of the hat racks completely fell to the ground. They started off the season 10-1, and they were the number 1 seed going into their big time tilt against the 49ers. And then it went. And I think the team really felt the losses of the defense coordinator, Jonathan Gannon, and the offense coordinator, Shane Steichen. Of course, Jonathan Gannon, head coach of the Cardinals. Steichen, now the head coach of the Colts. Of course, we'll talk about both those teams later. To end the season, they went 1-5, and then they got eliminated by the Buccaneers, the team they beat 25-11 earlier in the season. They got skunked 32-9. All right, I'll put it this way. You had a team that I think they really believed their hype a little too much. And think about this. They were third Jalen Hurts interception in the Jets game with 2 minutes to go in it for them to start the season 11-0. So they would have probably ran the table before they fell in their gauntlet portion of their schedule. But I saw a team that just simply did not. They believed they were better than they were, and they have a lot of talent. If I were to say the Eagles have no talent, I would be lying through my teeth. They have a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. I mean, we were talking about coming into the regular season. Look, they have the Bears and Richards on defensive line, and then they draft Jalen Carter. So, they may have lost Jason Hargrave, but there's only too many spots. There's only so many spots to go around. So you had this guy, and of course you had one of your best pass rushers in Hassan Reddick, who was still on the team, coming fresh off a 16-sack season. So things were going in the right direction, and they just had unfinished business. And I think they thought they were still the 2022 team because they played like the 2022 team in theory this year. And they took a lot of teams for granted. They sleptwalked through the season, and then they got thumped, starting with the 49ers when they came to Southfield and gave them a 42-19 butt whooping. And we just heard Deebo Samuel-Smith run nonstop until last Sunday. But I digress. Yes, L's to the 49ers, the Cowboys, and the Seahawks back-to-back. I think that pretty much deflated them. And then the bubble bursting loss, the 21-7 lead, turning into a 34-31 L to the Cardinals at home when they gave up over 200 yards on the ground. I think that's what did it for Eagles fan. Your thoughts on a team that was supposedly going to be one of the NFC representatives in the Super Bowl have a rather disappointing 11-6 season?
They definitely regressed in comparison to what they did the previous year by making it to the Super Bowl. From the PI call on Bradbury to the end zone throughout this entire season, I think that might have been a looming dark cloud from that play throughout the entirety of this season, because the defense was absolutely suspect. Primarily, yes, like Wise said,
I agree.
In the secondary, yes, I agree with that. That was your biggest problem throughout this season, as well as exactly, as well as not utilizing your weapons properly on offense. Because even though this is a stat that really kind of mind boggles some people were talking about in this past week. They had better offensive production than the Super Bowl winning champions, the Chiefs. They were the 8th best offense in the league, okay, as far as overall production of yards each game. They averaged, was it like 354.4 yards per game. The Chiefs only averaged 351. And, stats do make a difference because you got to be able to move the ball, got to pick up first downs. Whether it's field goals or touchdowns, you got to put points on the board, okay? So throughout that stretch where they were like 10-1, they were doing a great job of doing that. The downfall was very, very, very similar to that of a team that we talked about from the other Eastern Division, that being the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins are probably the Eagles of the AFC East, and the Eagles are the Dolphins of the NFC East. For how they regressed this season. Now, the Eagles didn't have the electric numbers throughout their dominance that they had throughout the season like the Dolphins did, but they were up there. They were in the conversation up until that 49er game. That 49er game really screwed them up. And, looking at it, they had issues with getting Quez Watkins rolling throughout this back half of the season. In the last game they played the Bucs, I remember he had only like 2 or 3 catches for 10, 11, 12 yards, something small like that. Like, averaging like a few yards per catch, and the hype that was coming off of him into this season, and an additional weapon for Jalen Hurts, this, that, and the other. It just didn't work out. I know Dante, I haven't completely read all of his comments yet, but I know he's probably going nuts in the chat right now because he is a devoted Eagles fan. Between him and Cool McCain.
Yes.
I know that the two of them were ready to throw bows by the end of this season, not with each other, but with people within this league and within this team for basically going from where you were at the top of the mountain the year prior and so close to winning another championship to having the dismal production that you had and this bleak outlook for this past season. Like I said earlier in the show, I feel like part of this has to go to the coaching for the preparation. You have to put it on Sirianni's shoulders here for the pressure because his head got a little big. He started jabbing back at the fans. And from that moment forward, once he started jabbing back at the fans, like you said, and, I can't do I can't do the effects like you did, but you did it great, like with how he went down. And I think of that more so with this team here than with the Dolphins because the Dolphins, there was hype throughout the season, but there was also a lot of speculation that because they're going for these records, that what was to happen happened. Okay. For that prediction it was more so for the Dolphins to take the nosedive for what they did because of what they were doing and putting up all these numbers, these stupid numbers. At some point, they're going to burn out. Okay. The Eagles, we thought, had improved or kept that lit flame going from the Super Bowl the previous year in a very similar way that we saw and thought of the 49ers when they had that loss in the NFC Championship and Brock Purdy's injury and bouncing back and having what they had for this season, before the 3-game skid that they had. So a lot of similarities there when you compare the 49ers and you compare the Eagles with that. But with this situation right here, when it comes to a grade, it's a little tough because, as we're here in the NFC East, through shade at the Commanders, especially because they were the worst team of the division. With the Giants, I said a D. You said, what was it, a C- for the Giants?
I said a D. Victor said either he was going to put D+ or C-.
Okay, so when I weigh all that and I think of the Eagles, I can't rank them so low because of what they did earlier on in the season, and this is very similar to what I was saying about the Dolphins in the previous take with the AFC side. I think because of they had like an A to A- performance for the 10-1 part of the season, I think completely laid an egg to where they had a D- or an F for the other part of the season. I think for this alone, I'm going to have to give the Eagles a C+ for my pick. And anybody out there, you'll probably agree or disagree with that. Maybe have them up a little bit, maybe have them down a little bit to a C, or C-. But I feel like that's a little bit too close to the ranking that I had for the Giants. And you got to give them their props for what they did leading up to the downfall. It wasn't like they had a completely terrible season all throughout. They just fell hard at the worst possible time. Because once it got to playoff time, you were a lower seed. All of the wind was taken out of your sails. There was not enough energy or positivity within that locker room to propel them for a victory in that wild card round. It was inevitable. When I turned that game on, I knew the Eagles were losing that day. So when it comes to that and how deflated they were by the end of the year, I'm going to have to give them a C+.
Yeah, I'll go C. And the only reason why I'm doing that is you hit the nail on the head for me. I saw Nick Sirianni, of course, for those who don't know, he's the head coach of the team. I saw him have hubris or arrogance go run amok. And I think it really led to the regression of the whole team, and the regression could not have been reflected any better than in Jalen Hurts, because I saw a guy who looked as though he was on his way to becoming a really good, solid NFL caliber QB last year. And then this year, I don't know what the heck I saw, because I was seeing a guy who I would actually compare to what Dak Prescott was last year, a guy who was an interception machine. So to me, that's where it is. The two biggest pieces, Nick Sirianni, his arrogance, Jalen Hurts, and his regression, because because the arrogance of the team and having the team regress so hard reflected in number one on the Eagles. And now we get to sit back and watch Dante just light the Eagles up. He says, first, this is all Hurts' fault. The only offensive roster that is better than the 49ers. How many teams have an A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and a DeAndre Swift? And that's another reason why I do not like Sirianni this past year, because his hubris thought, okay, we could pass our way through things. And you got a running back where you can tote the rock at least 25 times a game with. And if he was going to contribute the same way here as he did Detroit, why trade for him? But I digress. And you only put up 9 points in the wild card round against Tampa. He said, look, dude has more than 15 catches for a season. Told Watkins, Quez, to be ready, like you didn't see him running routes all year. Getting blown up by the 49ers and the Cowboys, he better get his stuff together. And he says, look, and look, forget the offense. The defense was so trash. At least it was trash. So what the offense has all the talent to at least have shootouts. Oh, and don't get me started on Sirianni.
I gotta stop Dante there. The majority of what he's saying, I agree with. One part is I cannot say that we gotta throw it all on Jalen Hurts though, because
I don't either.
You got to put it more on the coach, because, like you said, don't get you started with Nick. But I'm gonna have to get started with Nick in the defense of Jalen to say, at least in that game against the Bucs, yeah, you only put up 9 points. But he only had 10 incompletions on 35 passes. He's 25 of 35 with his production that day, 250 yards and a touchdown. He didn't turn the ball over, okay? So when I think about that, your biggest issue was the fact you couldn't get Swift going. He had 10 carries for 34 yards, averaging 3.4 yards per play. That is exactly. That's absolutely dumpster Pelican-like play from that. Now, I can't blame that 100% on your offensive line, but what I can say, because it may take a hit if Kelsey retires in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, it's going to take a hit when he retires. Yeah, and it's looking like it's heading that way based on his body language when he's talking about. He's just trying to find the right time to do it and not take away from the Chiefs Super Bowl win, I guess. But at the same time, I have to look at this situation and say, when it comes to this, I put more of the blame on Sirianni here than I do with Jalen Hurts. Yeah, Jalen made some mistakes. He's a young quarterback. But based on what he did the year prior, yeah, he had a little bit of a setback, but I don't put it more on him. A quarterback usually doesn't have that type of a downfall without the coach making the mistakes that he did. So I put the mistakes solely on this season for Nick Sirianni. If it regresses again next year, then we can start blaming other players on it. But the production of the team, the headspace, the morale of the team, I'm giving it to Nick Sirianni on this one for the blame.
I'm 1,000% with you on that. And you crystallized exactly what I was thinking about this team when I was saying earlier. The hubris of Sirianni contributed to the regression of the whole team, and it was greatest reflected in Hurts. And you could not have crystallized what I was saying better than that. And I do agree with you. I don't put it all on Hurts. I put some of it on him, but I put a lot of it on Sirianni.
And I got to acknowledge this right here for Dante. He said, Lane Johnson saying that Hurts was checking out of runs for passes. Well, you got to put yourself in that moment, okay? Whether you're playing it on the real field or even if you're playing Madden, if your running back's getting 2 to 3 yards per carry, it's not enough to be moving the chains. So if it's consistently happened that way, I may even check out of those plays for passes. Even a dump pass for 4 and 5 yards is still better than running for 2 or 3. And even if it is incomplete, you still had 35 passes and only 10 of them were incomplete. I'd take that gambling chance than a running play that may only get you 2 or 3 yards. So if he's calling audibles and checking and doing that stuff, I think I may have to agree with that. Maybe not doing it percentage-wise so much like you just said, but I'd at least be giving it more of a thought. So I can't be throwing my quarterback under the bus. That's more so I can't believe that Lane Johnson, a veteran like that, would say
something.
Yeah, That's where I was going with that. It's like why you as a veteran would say that about your young quarterback that you had just made a trip to the Super Bowl with the past year. What's that going to do for his confidence? You're on your way out of the league, but this guy's still got another 10, 12, 15 years left. I didn't expect Lane Johnson to say that. It was more of a surprise for it to come out of his mouth than for what that type of production that he was actually talking about to transpire.
And on top of it, in 2022, people were saying the biggest reason, literally, outside of probably the coaching staff, the biggest reason why Hurts was how he was producing was because of Lane Johnson. Although you normally would have a guy of his caliber be the left tackle, he's the right tackle, and he performed left tackle type duties for someone like a Jalen Hurts. And he was instrumental. A lot of people said he was instrumental in the success of Hurts. That was surprising that Lane would say that out in public. Maybe in the locker room it wouldn't surprise you, but in public, in the media, that would shock me. But Dante goes on to say, look, I don't know how we Dallased. We choked. We wasted draft picks on Jordan Davis and Nolan Smith. Yeah. He says, and now we're in salary cap casualty because we have to resign Hassan, Devontae, Josh, Landon, Dickerson, Milton. We're losing a lot of core talent because of Hurts' contract, bro. And Hurts has to understand that you're not going to have multiple weapons when you're going to get paid top 5 money. Oh Lord. He says they are an F-.
we can't rank them as low as the Commanders now.
He says they are an F- simply because they lost to the Giants and the Cardinals in back-to-back games. That's how they ended their regular season. Home loss to the Cardinals, the road L in the Meadowlands to the Giants.
And the Jets.
Yeah. And he said that early in the season, they were only 2 in the Meadowlands this year because they lost the Giants and the Jets there. Yeah. Victor says, Sirianni pulled an Icarus and flew too close to the sun. Love the analogy, sir. Love the analogy. He also says the O-line of the Eagles seem to have started to play passive in the second. Oh my gosh. Okay, no, I'm gonna jump off the soapbox. I'm not gonna go on it. Because yes, I'm 100% with you. All I'll say is Christmas night game, the Christmas afternoon game at home against the Giants. That is when I felt that for the offensive line, because I thought they're playing real passive and they're playing, heck, I'll say it, punkish. Dante says, look, I disagree, Drew. Look at Texas versus the Ravens and the Super Bowl, and you run the ball enough, it will wear down the defense. We're with you on that, bro.
Yeah.
That's exactly how we think. How we think.
I agree with you on that. But 3 yards, you think about this too, 3 yards every play, you're still left with the 4th and 1, okay, on an average set of downs, okay, and you're not going to go for it every time on 4th and 1. So when you at that point are at 3rd and 4, you're more likely going to pass the ball a little bit more. So I can see where you're coming from, but they've got to get a little bit better with the balance of it. I see what you're saying about Jalen being unapproachable too. I think part of that is because he's still maturing. He's still a young quarterback. Yeah, so give him another year or so. I think that situation may turn off Kelsey from returning, because had you lost this year, say in the NFC Championship, gotten a little bit further, and it wasn't under the circumstances that you did, I think Kelsey would be willing to put his body through another year of this team to get a chance of winning a second Super Bowl. The chances of you guys winning another Super Bowl in 2024 are a lot slimmer than the odds than what it was for the start of the 2023 season, because your odds were up there based on how you'd done the previous year before. So it's a good take with what you just said, Dante, about the fact that he's unapproachable, because hopefully he'll learn from it and grow, because as a quarterback, you're the leader of that side of the team in a lot of ways over the entire team. So you have to be approachable. You have to be that spark for the entire team. And hopefully they can get that figured out this offseason. There's a very good thing you said right there.
Well, and also, I mean, there was scuttlebutt earlier in the season before AJ Brown went on his streak of just dominating secondaries, where he and Hurts had a tear on the sideline saying that they just weren't connecting, and so that might be adding more fuel to the fire in terms of Hurts being unapproachable. He says, "Look, I see what you're saying, but look, with Sirianni, he doesn't get it, and Hurts isn't fast. How many times we seen him get chased down? Well, yeah, he isn't fast. He's more of like a quick. He has a quick burst, and I think if he learns that he can't outrun, but basically like Mahomes, he'll run for the sake of, okay, well, I'll get these yards, and if I get as much yards as I can, I'll hit the dirt. If he had that mentality, and that takes time, that takes maturity, then I think he will be better. But yeah, I agree with you. He shouldn't try to run to get as many yards as he can and possibly either get chased down or blasted. Worse, blasted.
He needs that Patty Mahomes speed.
And the thing about him, and we'll talk about him, of course, later, he just has the way of knowing when to make those runs and how it can break the back of a defense. That is the lane that Jalen Hurts needs to drive down. Not necessarily run it as often as he does, but run it at the right time to where it's like, dang, I thought we had this team stopped and this dude had to be broken free. And that's what you want Hurts to have opposing fans and defenses say. It's like, dang, we had them wrapped up. We had them stopped, but this guy with his legs beats us. And not run 20 times in the game, but just a selective 5 or 6. Where it's like a 3rd and 1 or a 4th and 1, where it's like, oh yeah, we got him now, and then bam, he breaks free for like a 10-yard run. It's like, that's what you want out of Hurts, but he has to learn how to do that. Wyatt says, look, JJ McCarthy, that's our QB. Of course, JJ McCarthy right now, he's in Michigan. He's set to be in the draft this year, and he's hoping that the Giants draft him. Well, we shall see, sir.
I forget who was the quarterback, and you might remember this a little bit better than me. Like, that was Jimmy Johnson's quarterback in Miami that
Steve
he brought
Walsh.
in. Yep, that he brought into Dallas. Okay, so what if that was a situation over there for the Chargers where they find themselves, because JJ McCarthy's, unless I'm wrong in thinking this, I don't think he's going to be a top 10 pick.
I don't think it's going to be a top 10 pick either.
So he could slip down, far enough. I'm not saying the Chargers are going to be taking him in the first round, but what if he slips to round 2 or round 3? I don't think he'll go as far as round 3, but what if he slips to round 2? Do you pick him up and have a certain specific Steve Wall situation over there for the Chargers? Because even though you are enamored and love Justin Herbert, he has had some bang-ups in the past, and if he gets hurt, you got a reliable source of somebody that you can win with like you did in Michigan. Do you pick up J.J. McCarthy in that draft? Is a side question.
Well, how looks like how Harbaugh's doing it. He wants to have familiarity, and he wants to have people that he knows that knows his system, that knows him. So that he might do that.
Just the Wise statement had me thinking that for a second. It kind of veered me off to the side, but I'm thinking
That's right.
It's kind of like a decent insurance policy, but I don't know if he's going to slip far enough for them to be able to make that type of pick.
I don't think he'll slip that far. Yeah. Oh, and Victor. Oh yes, it is gonna hurt. And why are we saying it's going to hurt? Mr. Wise El Jefe, would you please do the honors? We them girls.
What?
We them girls.
What?
I said we them girls.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm trying to get to his comment that he said earlier too, talking about his. There we go. Because he, of course, Wise is a Giants fan. He has a cousin who is an absolute annoying Cowboys fan. So annoying, he calls his cousin out by name every single time.
First and last name.
First and last.
Not just first name, but first and last
First
name.
and last name.
Full blast.
Yes, puts him on full blast. And mind you, why is he's putting his own last name on there? Because his brother has his last name. His cousin has his last name too. He says Marvin Otero is crying in the corner of his shower once again because his Cowboys, he calls Cowgirls, lose again in the playoffs. All right, so yes, they finished the season 12-5 for the third year in a row. Last year it was only for a 5th seed. The year before it was good enough for a number 3 seed. This year was good enough for a number 2 seed in the NFC. Mike McCarthy, after ousting Kellen Moore, who now, well, he was the offensive coordinator for the Chargers. Now he's gone bye-bye. McCarthy decided to take the reins on offense, although he hired Brian Schottenheimer to be the official offense coordinator. I digress. But, let me put this caveat here too. McCarthy said that they were going to go back to running the ball more. That's what he said at the beginning of the season. We're going to run the ball more. Maury.
That was a lie.
However, though, Dak Prescott had his best season, I should say, since his rookie campaign, where he did not throw for 10 interceptions. So he took care of the ball, and he managed to have the team go up and down the field to the tune of having an explosive offense. And the unfortunate part was for the Cowboys, they lost their star corner, Trayvon Diggs, but they discovered another star corner in Deron Bland, who was catching everything thrown to him. So they discovered a new defensive star to go along with the fact that Micah Parsons continued to show that he is the best player on the team, and teams having to double team him more than anybody else in the in the league today. And I think the rating was like 35% of snaps he was double teamed, at least double teamed. And remember about 10 years ago, around the time when Tony Romo was on his way out the door, that AT&T Stadium was not a great home field advantage for the Cowboys. They were not all that great at home. Well, this year they were wonderful at home. They were 8-0. They were undefeated throughout their regular season at home. I mentioned regular season because did they win their home playoff game in the wild card round? The final score was 48-32. They took it on the chin to the Packers, with Jordan Love starting his very first playoff game. We will talk about what he did when we talk about the Packers. But the game wasn't that close because with 6 minutes to go, the score was 48-16. For such a great regular season, the wild card round made this season for the Cowboys such a disastrous failure. Your thoughts on their team and the grade that you'd give them?
With this team right here, they got lucky, very, very lucky to get to the number 2 seed in the NFC, because it took the Eagles having their fall of grace to basically get them to that point of the number 2 seed and to win the NFC East. So I still, when I look at this entire season for this team, I cannot even think of anything else but that NFC wildcard round, because of, again, you get to the playoffs. The hype is there as you as the number 2 seed. The Cowboys fans are coming all over the place doing this.
Hey, ain't nobody.
Is what you can do with that. Because, yes, because the breaking news to the delete is this. The fact that your defense gave up that amount of points. You gave up 48 points. And
Well,
then,
defense gave up 41, but yes.
But still, you gave up that amount of points, and your defensive coordinator becomes a head coach. What is wrong with the NFL and my franchise, which we'll get back to that later, because that had nothing to do with the 2023 season. But when it comes to the 2023 season, I still can't think about anything else but this last game, because we the boys will come in there, we're going to get this win. And you got upset by a first-year starting quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. Yeah, he did sit behind Rodgers for a few seasons, but still. He's still come out there, first playoff game, and looked like he was reincarnated as Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers combined into the temple of somebody else to provide one great performance, because Jordan Love lit you up with 3 touchdowns, only had 5 incompletions, and nearly threw for 275 yards in that game. Okay. Torched your defense all over the place. Yes. And I even said it in that episode the recap episode with you, said that the loss of Trayvon Diggs earlier in the season didn't really make this the game of them giving up that amount of points. For them, right, like you said, giving up 41 points, but still as a whole team giving up 48 points, nearly 50 points in the game, and for a playoff game. I can understand having that type of tough loss in the regular season, but in the playoffs, you got to be at 100 as far as giving it your all. And there was some, lackluster production on that defensive side, and primarily, I think, from lack of effort. In my opinion. And I wouldn't really say more so lack of preparation, because if it was lack of preparation or had anything to do with the coaching, Dan Quinn would not be a head coach for the Washington Commanders as of today. Correct. So it has to deal with the player, the personnel, and that's what I'm going to throw my shade at for this. Now, we went hard on the Commanders. We went hard, especially I had to a little bit on the Giants just because Waz El Jefe. And then the Eagles, Now looking at the Cowboys, because they did play like dumpster Pelicans to start the season, but then improved throughout the year to get to the number 2 seed before becoming a dumpster Pelican again for the playoff game. Because we were even saying they were just teasing us anyway, because they're going to get there and lose either that first game or at least by the second game. They were not going to make it to the NFC Championship. We already had established that. There was no budge on that, and we were 100% correct with that being said. So I think we talk about the season, not really the playoff performance with this. So based on what they did in the season to get to the playoffs, I think I have to give them, I want to say, a B-. Like, and in some people's eyes, it might be a little bit high of a grade. Waz El Jefe agrees. So, but I was pondering it for a second. It's like, I don't want to give him a C. I don't want to give him a C+ because that's too close to Eagles. And I just because they were the 2 seed, I feel like I gotta do better. Give them in the B category, and for that, I give them the B-.
I would give them a B if they actually took care of business at home against the Packers in the playoffs. And even if they would have been bounced in the divisional round, which I thought they would have, like you said. But the slow start and the disappointing, spectacular failure. And I don't mean the L. I just mean the fact that you had a team walk up in there and put 48 points on you with 6 minutes to go in the game. And this wasn't a regular season game. This wasn't a preseason game. This was a playoff game. Yeah. B- is the right grade. I also give them that too. And Wise once his back patted, he says, I would also like to say I was the one who called Green Bay's victory in Jerry's world. Yes, you called the victory that the Packers have over the Cowboys in Jarrell's world. Yes, I'll give you credit, sir. Oh, and Dante says I could see JJ dropping to the third round.
Okay, and then in that case, the Chargers might be able to pick up some insurance.
And and for less money. Oh Lord, I 100% agree with you, Dante. Yeah, I give them A for annoying, and I would agree with you there.
I would make that A stand for something else, but will be nice.
Well, yeah, not necessarily the team, because actually I find Jarrell hilarious. The team is fine. I don't have an issue with the team. The fan base is annoying, and no, I'm not addressing it to either Ben or my man Ivan Dawkins or even Chris Dietz or Victor. That doesn't apply to you guys because you actually are not annoying with your fandom. You actually are realistic with it. But gosh, they are annoying.
They could also be A for this.
Now, that is absurd.
For absurdity.
Well, they are absurd. Oh, and Dante, of course, being the proud Eagles fan that he was, the game in Arlington between the Cowboys and the Eagles was their Super Bowl. I can see that. He also says Dak is just Eli 2.0, like Pat Statters, a.k.a. Eli, Dak, Phillip Rivers, example. Eli can play next year and throw for 4,400 yards, 32 touchdowns, 6 picks, and still lose in the playoffs, but the stats look good.
I have to respectfully disagree because at least Eli has 2 Super Bowls.
I was about to say Eli would actually he'll actually find a way to actually look good in January. That's the good thing about him. He may have these stats where it's like, well, what's to him in the regular season? But if your team was good enough to get you to the playoffs, he will give you that run where it's like, we didn't see this in September to December. Where the heck did this come from? But he'd be one of those big time stud QBs in the postseason.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Eli would have won a Super Bowl with this team. Like if he had like the teams that he had with the Giants, one of those 2 teams had less talent than what the Cowboys had this year. This was supposed to be the Cowboys' year. Had Eli Manning been on this team, you take prime Eli Manning, 2007, 2008, or even the second Super Bowls, Eli Manning, 2011-ish, 2012 time, he would have won a Super Bowl in that form of place of how he was at that point in today's for this team. He would have won a Super Bowl for that team. So, yes, I got to give you your flowers there. Wise, the 2 rings, one of those 2 would have benefited for this team had one of those 2 types of versions of Eli Manning played for the Cowboys this season.
Yeah. Oh, and they said the A for annoying, that grade would apply to Melvin Otero. Marvin Otero. The fact that he just keeps saying his cousin's name first and last is hilarious. And it's always even when the 2 of us are talking in private, he'll even mention he didn't even say my cousin. He didn't even say my cousin Marvin. He's his man Marvin Otero. I'm like, I get that's your cousin, dude. You don't have to say that. But
you could even say MO up here, and we would know at this point who you were talking about. But no, he wants to put him on blast that much to let you know that that's what it applies for. A is for him as well.
And I felt bad for Wise because on mentality when the Giants and the Cowboys played, he was making a plea for the Giants to win, and then they give him the 40-0 beating. I'm like, oh Lord, I know you probably didn't hear the end of it from your cousin. He says, yeah, you're right. But I look at the Cowboys, and this team is a study in disappointment, and I say that from this standpoint. They got talent. They got talent, all phases on defense. And all phases of offense. The offensive line is good. The running backs are okay. That's the only weak spot to me. But I say okay because I think Tony Pollard can actually be better than he produced. But and they have some others that can do that. But I guess they shrink when the spotlight's hot on them. Dak is a good QB. I'm not going to say he's great. And you got a piece in CD Lamb who can make any QB look like $1 billion. And you got other pieces too. Jake Ferguson, who has grown out of the Dalton Schultz previously held position, and now they have a tight end feature with him. And they have other pieces too, Gallup and others on the wide receiver spot. So they got talent there. The coaching, I'm not a fan of. I'm not a fan of Mike McCarthy. I'm not a fan of him. I never will be a fan of his. And I'm gonna hate him. I just don't like what he can produce for the team, because I think he's going to make a team underachieve no matter how talented they are. And the best coach they had to let him go because the last performance was the worst.
Yeah, and you think about what they did in the playoffs the year prior with that final play and Zeke's last play as a Cowboy, and then, had that
no confidence in him.
Yeah, had that exit not happened the way that it happened on that day,
right?
I don't think that there would have been so much shade thrown towards the Cowboys when they decided to keep McCarthy this year. You received more fire for that because of what happened the year prior, and with his track record that he's had as a head coach since winning that Super Bowl that he won in Green Bay. I mean, since that year that he won in Green Bay, he hasn't really had much to look at to get happy about for success, especially over here in Dallas. So, definitely a tightrope. The tightest rope that you'll be walking will be this year, Mike McCarthy, of all your years as a head coach in the NFL, I believe, because if you don't make it to the NFC Championship, let alone win it this year, I think you're out as head coach for Dallas, because they're going to make some moves this offseason. They're not going to have the capital to make moves like Washington, but they're going to make enough moves to where they're going to be relevant again in 2024. And it's going to be solely on the coaching if they can't even get to the NFC Championship this year, because they should have at least gotten to the divisional round this past season.
Yeah, they should have, because that's what they got last year. So they regressed in terms of the playoff positioning. They regressed because they were 12-5 and got to the division round last year. They were 12-5 and got bounced to walk around this year. And this is why I do not believe in a Mike McCarthy-led team. Those two words right there. Thank you, Wise. No heart. That's what I see with this team. It's like, okay, they go through the motions. They may know the X's and O's, but I just think that they're going to wilt under the pressure of a team that wants it more than they do. And that's what we saw in last month when the Packers went to town. They wanted it more, and they had nothing to lose when they faced against the Cowboys. The Cowboys actually thought, okay, well, this is going to be an easy victory. And they look up, and they were down 27-0 before they blinked. So, yeah. And the reason why he puts Marvin Otero's name first and last is because people must know those fans exist. You are so awesome, Wise. I'm sorry. And for the NFC East as a whole, all right, so we had a 4-13 Commanders team, 6-11 Giants squad, 11-6 Eagles squad, and a 12-5 Cowboys squad. I gave the AFC East a C. I'm going to give the NFC East a C+. And I'm going to give them that because I see hope with the Commanders. And I think I see hope with the Commanders, albeit they may screw the pooch, but I still see hope in that team. The Eagles and the Cowboys are very talented. And the Giants defensively, they have pieces they can build from that side of the ball and have it carry on the other side if they want to. It's just that, good Lord, they ended spectacularly bad. The Eagles and the Cowboys did. Both got bounced the walkout round. They were spectacular fails. And I would want to have the grade for the division be higher, but for the bluster that they had, they ended with a, and it's unfortunate.
I agree with you with the AFC East, but I want to have to respectfully disagree with you on this one for the NFC East for the entire division as a whole. And the reason being, you had one of the two teams just in the Super Bowl the year prior with the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had the stupid amount of hype on the Cowboys as always. And because they got to 12 wins and were the 2 seed, because of that, I'm giving them a D for disastrous. I'm giving the entire division a D for disastrous. When the bright spot that I'm looking at is, Daboll coaching the Giants to 6 wins and how much of a spark that can be going into next season, and the new ownership for the Commanders, and yet they only still muster up 4 wins and not much of an improvement from the year prior. And then the other 2 teams we just talked about as a whole, I'm giving the NFC East a D, and I'm hoping they take this as motivation to completely improve their franchises as a whole for all 4 teams so we can see some better play and competition in 2024.
Dante gives the NFC East an A. He says, as a whole, the talent is there. Yeah, the division is loaded with talent. Actually, all 4 teams have talent. Unfortunately, I'd have to say my partner's Commanders probably has the least of the 4, but there is talent there. He said, but the coaching holds us back. Definitely coaching holds the Eagles back. For sure, the coaching holds the Cowboys back. We'll see with Dan Quinn with the Commanders. But the coaching was holding the Commanders back a bit with Rivera. The only team where you can't say that about is Giants with Daboll. I don't think he was holding the division. I don't think he was holding the Giants back. I just think the talent held them back. Wyatt says, look, he gives the NFC East a D+. And see, the reason why I'm not quite as hard on the NFC East is because they don't have the Patriots in it, because the Patriots are horrible. They are horrible. And yeah, I could look at, you had one team in the AFC East go further in the playoffs than both the NFC East teams did. Yeah. But I'm also looking at it from the standpoint of the team, the division actually looks a little better as a whole. Wise says, look, you might want to ask Wink about Daboll. Well, yeah, I've heard a little bit about that.
My comparison between the two, when you look at the Commanders and the Patriots, they kind of equal themselves out because they both were the dumpster pelicans of the East divisions between AFC and NFC. Mm-hmm. The deal breaker for me, because the Bills and the Dolphins were like the Eagles and the Cowboys of the division. Mm-hmm. And the deal breaker for me was the fact that the Jets have a substantial amount of more talent on their team over the Giants. And even though they've got one more win, their defense carried them to all 7 of those wins. And the Giants limped there through their 6. So, and like you said in our slate, they'd never really recovered from that 40-point deficit to the Cowboys. So putting all that and thinking about everything as a whole, that's why I had to rank the NFC East much lower than the AFC East, with all that being said, because even though the Patriots as a whole are a far worse franchise right now than the Commanders, they still had the same amount of production. So it kind of balances themselves out with those lower 2-tier teams of the divisions.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. And yes, Wise, I'm aware that Martin Dare cursed out Daboll because of all the other firings. I'm aware of that. But I know the head coaches get pressure in wanting to have the front office say to them, okay, so how are we going to make this team next year not look like how this looks now? And so changes had to be made. We're going to get to it later how one guy did another dirty in that regard, and they went all the way. So stay tuned for that. Well, that ends opening drive. That ends the grading period for the AFC and the NFC East. Stay tuned. We will have 2 more divisions ready to grade next week. But when we return, we will get to the Gridiriron Scoop, and we'll have a special edition of the Dogs of the Week / Grand Champs.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989 on 2. Ready?
We're just getting started. Total Football Talk will return right after this.
Everything Boston. I love you morons. New Kids on the Block, New Edition.
Dear whatever the law firm is. Sincerely, the U.S. Supreme Court.
Ben Affleck, Matt Damon. Go yourself again, Jason Whitlock.
Ready to hang with some fellas who know football? Let's ride. LC Muscles 28.
I think they're the most overrated defense in the league.
Steel Sermon.
We did not trail for a single second.
Tiny Tim.
McCarthy is a bonehead.
A Pizzle 90.
I'm going with my boys. Fins up, baby.
Get ready for the Four Horsemen of Pick'ems. Every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central on YouTube. Poppy J.
You got the option to cry for the government. You got the option to protest. You got the option to keep buying. But this is also an option.
Wise El Jefe.
We're the first tech geeks. We're the first gamers. We're the first everything. Everything. Like Gen X's, we are the ones.
BS3 Network proudly presents the crew from the New York boroughs who never wants that smoke. Nah, they want that fire. Poppy J and Wise El Jefe, Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. Check your local listings for your viewing and listening pleasure.
Hopefully we can get some sound from Cole here in a second. I'm not really too sure what's happening. Might be StreamYard acting a fool. StreamYard, get my dude straight. Because, I heard a hiss. Still no sounds. I heard a whistle. It went whoosh. It went whoosh. That's all I heard. So if you guys could hear me, I'm guessing because Cole dropped out for a second, he was hearing me just fine, and you are probably hearing me just fine. You just got to say, when it comes to the interwebs, sometimes that's how things be going out here in the stream. So it is what it is when it comes to Total Football Talk. Still nothing. I don't know what is going on. It's not my headset. I can 1000% assure you guys. Let us know here in the comments if you're having any issues hearing me or if you're hearing Cole just fine. Like, I don't hear him. This is StreamYard being a StreamYard self-ish thing. There you go.
All right.
Now I
switch
hear
microphones. You. Yeah.
Is it your microphone?
Yeah, I had to switch microphones. All right.
Oh, wow.
Sorry about that.
No,
All
you're
right,
fine.
well,
I don't know. I was wondering just for like troubleshooting causes, what causes it to do that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, well, take two. With Drew Willingham, I am Coach Also. Welcome back to Total Football Talk. Thank you, sir. I'm so sorry that you couldn't hear me. So sorry for the technical difficulties, everybody. Wise talking about the pic that is in the mentality commercial. He says, look, wifey hates that picture. You described how she hated that picture, and I tailored it to where she could like it a lot more. Thank you, Dante. Thank you, Wise. So wifey should like you. I mean, come on, man. It's you. It's wise. You know? Oh, really? Really? Still. She don't like the whole picture. Man, that's cold, man. Wow. Anyway, we'll have to get wifey. Well, scrape. We have to get it together. I can find other pictures. We'll have to get wifey to get on that. But I'm sorry. We should not conduct mentality business on Total Football Talk airwaves. But but glad that you're enjoying the fun. And here is the Gridiron Scoop. Now, with the UFL, yes, United Football League, not XFL or USFL, but with the UFL about 5 or so weeks away from beginning, one of the spring football's top players is returning to the St. Louis Battlehawks. Yes, you might know the quarterback's name of AJ McCarron. He agreed to terms last week, one of 4 surviving XFL teams that will make up the new UFL league. Now, he started 9 games with the Battlehawks last year, throwing for an XFL record 24 touchdowns, while leading the league with a completion rating of almost 69%. Now, he was with the Bengals, and he spent the last 6 weeks of the season on their active roster following starter Joe Burrow's injury with his wrist. Now, my question to you, sir, is do you believe that this is Mr. McCarron's swan song with pro football?
It could be, because I mean his age, he's 33 years old, but I don't quite think so. We're talking about the reigning, defending XFL MVP. That's the one thing that we didn't discuss with the awesome intro that you gave there too. I mean, he's the reigning XL MVP.
Yeah.
So if you look at this, now that we're the UFL, okay,
Mhm.
if he has a great season this year, I think he sticks around. If he has a mediocre to bad season, I think he hangs it up. I mean, he said it himself last year when we were watching XFL. He wanted his kids to be able to see him actually get meaningful game time, because in the position that he was with the Bengals as a backup, I believe he was with the Falcons for a couple of T as well after that, and the Texans and the Raiders after his tenure with the Bengals. You know, he didn't really get meaningful game time in playing time. And if he did, it was garbage time, or if somebody, off an injury came in. And usually you're getting injured if you're the starting quarterback, if you're playing against a very tough defense. So it's not like you're coming in there being ultimate hero or anything. It's very, very slim cases and percentage wise where you come in and be the hero. When it comes to him coming back to the Battlehawks, I think this is a great move for him. Not only one to prolong his career, but for his kids to see him play. But it gives us a chance to see if we can validate that 2023 XFL MVP season. I mean, he did only play in 9 games, but he made the best out of those 9 games. I mean, I saw AJ McCarron, like the college play of AJ McCarron last year in the XFL, of what the hype was, him coming out of college. Like, we saw him live up to that in the XFL. Now, it is a different stage. There's different players around you. You have been in the NFL this entire time. So, of course, it's elevated you above the talents you're playing with in the XFL at the time. But I think that this does good for his career. He'll be able to have a little bit more fun like he did in the 2023 season. Not sure if he'll be quite the XFL MVP or UFL MVP of that matter for this season, but I think he'll have a pretty productive season and have some fun. And beyond that, I think we have the potential to see him after the 2024 season as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think this is how he wants to write his chapter. The end of this, I shouldn't say that chapter. Write the rest of his book. I think this is how he wants to end it, because he gets a chance to actually shine, and not only that, he gets a chance to pour into a community along with having his children see him play. He gets a chance to pour into a community that is football starved, and they love the product. So they'll get to see his children get to see their father in such a great light, actually. And yeah, I wish him the best. And of course, last year he was the man. as you mentioned, and hopefully that will continue this year. Well, we shall see. We definitely will be covering it. Oh, and we'll answer this question now. I know I have the Dolphins win the AFC East, and I have I'll see the Eagles winning the NFC East. That's me.
Okay.
That's me. Yeah.
So when it comes to that, I will say the Eagles. I'm going to give the Eagles the benefit of the doubt and bounce back this next year.
Mm-hmm.
And for the division on this, I'm going to say the Dolphins.
Yeah.
And they bounce back as well. So those are my picks. But this is very early to give those picks, but still a good question.
Yeah. It's a good question because I think those two teams will learn and they'll learn from their lumps, and I think they'll be better. That's what I believe. But AJ, good job, brother. I hope you rock out hard in St. Louis this year like you did last year, and you show what type of talent you still have left because you had a lot when you showed us last spring.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we are back to the NFL. So Jim Harbaugh, he is the now newly minted head coach of the Chargers. They should move back to San Diego, but we'll jump off that soapbox real fast. One thing is that his staff has a lot of familiarity to it. Now, we talked about the possibility of, and that's a really good point that you mentioned too, Drew, of Harbaugh actually taking a flight. Of course, they were in Michigan when Harbaugh was the head coach and McCarthy was the starting quarterback there. So familiarity is something that Jim Harbaugh is about. For instance, Greg Roman is now his new offensive coordinator. Jesse Minter, who was in Michigan with him, he's his defense coordinator. Jesse's father, Ray, is a senior defensive assistant. Let me see. You have Ryan Ficken, who there's a little bit of familiarity with him. He's a special teams coordinator. Let me see. Along with other names that ring true with him. You have Mark Trestman. Of course, we know him as a longtime defense coordinator. He actually led the Bears in 2013, 2014. And Bears and offense seem really strange when you say this, but yes, he led the Bears to the number 2 ranking scoring offense with 28 points per game. You have defensive line coach Mike Elston. He was in Michigan. So there's a tie there. And then there's the 49ers tie. Linebackers coach, Navarro Bowman. And for those who are unaware, he was a standout linebacker for the 49ers for 4 seasons. And he was a perennial All-Pro while Harbaugh was the head coach there. Now, Klingscale also moved with Harbaugh, Steve Klingscale, defensive backs coach. So obviously, there's familiarity with the Harbaugh coaching tree and the staff. Which names jump out at you and will help turn things around in LA?
As far as the coaching staff or the players?
As far as the coaching staff.
Coaching staff, I would say Bowman definitely gives a spark, because it's a former player under Harbaugh that he had with the 49ers as well. I kind of like the Trestman pickup as well over there. It definitely help some things. I mean, you really haven't heard that name in a while. But, regardless of these other names that you mentioned, I think the biggest addition and the biggest impact that we have to analyze with this that jumps out is just Harbaugh himself, because this all wouldn't be coming to fruition. Yeah, this all wouldn't be coming to fruition or even be a topic of the day, especially post Brandon Staley era, had it not been for the pickup of Jim Harbaugh. Most likely will go down as the best coaching pickup of this offseason. Going forward for the rest of this decade, we could see some really special things coming from this Chargers team. The names that you mentioned, that they were some fairly decent names, especially between Trestman and Bowman, really stick out to me the most. But I can't get so excited about it yet because we still haven't seen it, in action. So once I get to see it in action and see the product live, I think that's when I'll really start getting my gears turning on that. It's a little bit for me in this moment based on, except for Jim Harbaugh, I can get excited about that because he's a national champion head coach who just came off of a national championship victory before he came over to the Chargers. The other ones still have a lot left to prove, are not quite on the level as Harbaugh, but I think Harbaugh can help elevate the rest of his coaching staff to where they can get to where they need to be within the next few years as far as the type of foundation that they want to set out. Not any of what I just said says they're going to the Super Bowl and going to win or anything. What I'm saying is he's going to drastically improve this team's culture and foundation from the jump. I mean, we're going to see it pay dividends this year to where they're at least going to have a better record, or if they don't have a better record, they're at least going to be in it every game to where they can at least make you think they're going to have a better record when they're playing these games. So I say that those names that you rattled off were good, but I think it's the head coaching hire that's going to help elevate them to probably their best coaching performances individually in a very long time, if not ever.
Yeah. And I did mention Greg Roman's name. He is the offensive coordinator of the Chargers now. Harbaugh understands. And the reason why, well, Roman was offensive coordinator under Harbaugh when he was with the 49ers. Understanding Roman, he also has a passing coordinator. So there you go. And also a couple of coaches were under John Harbaugh, yes, his older brother for the Ravens, and they now are going to be helping out the offense, and I guess give the offense a little more of attitude, I think, the way that I think Harbaugh would like it. Jim, I mean. Dante asked a really good question. He says, now, with college football coaches losing head coaches to NFL, do you think the UFL will become home to some of those guys?
That's a good question. I'd like to see Mike Vrabel go over there to be a head coach and like dominate and prove the NFL like, hey, you really screwed up. As far as the NFL coaches, because there's opportunity to grow the league over there, but I feel like, for someone like Belichick, it would be a major step down to go over to the UFL. Staley, probably our only opportunity to be a coach would be in the UFL right now. So who knows? But I mean, you got other, old school coaches like Wade Phillips over there in the UFL right now doing things. Looking at it as a whole, I think the UFL's got something special where they don't need to completely retread it all out with people who couldn't hack it in the NFL, because that's not what it's like overall message is for. It could be like a feeder system for a somewhat of a minor league play, like a B league style to feed the NFL, kind of like how, if you compare it to like professional wrestling, how I was last year comparing the XFL, the type of game we were watching to watching something like professional wrestling. You got like OVW or FCW back in the day was the feeder system for the minor leagues, from that to WWE. So that could be similar to what The Rock is envisioning for the UFL and his league going forward. So, that's a good question right there as far as the head coaches, but only time will tell. I think we're going to have to see how the mix of this UFL season goes for 2024, following that with the NFL season, before we can fully answer that next year.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when you have more coaching opportunities, you'll have that pop up. And you sort of have that example, Bill O'Brien, who seems to find a spot. Now he is involved with Ohio State now, where, he was in the league this past year. I think he was the offense coordinator of the Patriots. Of course, that went completely horrible. But now he's with Ohio State, and before then he was with Alabama. So, yeah, I mean, if you have a name, there'll be schools, programs, and teams that will take a flyer out on you. That's just how it is. But you just gotta have a name and gotta have a presence out there. Although Ohio State, get rid of Bill O'Brien as fast as you can. I'm just saying. Now, the Chiefs have pronounced themselves to be a dynasty. And that's not bragging. That's just facts. With 3 out of the last 4 Super Bowls they've won and going back to back, they are the team that all the other 31 want to be like and beat. Now you wouldn't think this wonderful Midwestern city would be this dynasty or this dynastic, but they are. And now the team feels that way. Oh, you don't believe me? Travis Kelce had this to say about the team's fortunes and if they actually doubted if they were going to be a dynasty. Quote, "Never a doubt in my mind, baby. Never a doubt in my mind. Never a doubt in my mind. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that I've been able to go through these 3 times now. It gets sweeter and sweeter every time, baby." Close quote. Now, all Travis Kelce needs to do is adopt more of that Texas twang and have a lisp, and he could be the bull of the woods. Because I swear, I think he wants to sound like a more refined Dusty Rhodes. I'm sorry, we're talking wrestling, football. My question to you, sir: how far do you think this Chiefs dynasty will go?
It's a good question because not many people would have thought they would have won a back-to-back championship this year, especially with the regression of how the offense was playing. And people were saying that when they traded away Tyreek Hill, like that was it. They weren't going to get to the Super Bowl and win when they won the previous season. But they built a stellar defense over there that's been definitely doing its job. And, if they had the team that they had 2 years ago going against this 49ers team this year, they would have lost. They would not have won the Super Bowl this year. It's the defense that kept them in that game throughout the entirety of the game. Yes, Mahomes did his magician-like work, in the overtime and got that touchdown pass to McCole Hardman and did his magic there. But had it not been for the defense doing what they did throughout that game and let alone the entire season in the playoffs, they wouldn't have got here. And the scary part is they still have another draft. And even though Chris Jones is a free agent, I mean, come on, he's going to resign. I mean, why wouldn't you when you've won 3 out of the last 4 Super Bowls? Okay. Well, 3 out of the last 5 Super Bowls. And, out of your 4 appearances, you've won 3 out of 4, and you've had this type of success. No matter what kind of money is thrown your way, you are not going to have this type of success or the potential to three-peat anywhere else. I think Chris Jones does one of 2 things. He's either going to sign he can do one of 3 things. He's either, in my opinion, I think, though, he's going to sign either a 1-year extension, so that way he can have the opportunity to potentially three-peat with the Chiefs at an affordable rate to let them go get other weapons as well, because they do need to get some help at wide receiver. I mean, if it was not for that trade for McCole Hardman from the Jets, we wouldn't even be having this discussion right now. So that trade was huge. So looking at that, they bring in Chris Jones. They re-sign Chris Jones. I think it's either going to be a 1-year extension or he's going to sign somewhere else and take a lot of money and just get the years and get set up for the rest of his life because he's already got 3 Super Bowls. I don't blame him if he does that either. But at the same time, I feel like he's got a really good chance at re-signing with the Chiefs for either a 1-year deal or even if they do throw him the money for an extended period of time, because they're backtracking Mahomes is paid to where they're not paying him a good portion of that until after he's retired. Kind of like similar to the Cliff Floyd deal, I believe, in baseball is how Mahomes' deal is for football. So it allows them the structured cap to be able to pay some of these other players to keep this thing going. If they keep Chris Jones, if they, bring another wide receiver or 2, make some moves in the draft, I think that the Chiefs can continue to build on this thing. I think that they have something special there, and they can win another one this year. But it all depends. It's very similar to what we were saying earlier about, how there's a lot of upside, Dante was saying, for the Commanders and how they can turn it around a little bit quicker than any of the other teams we're talking about with our grades. I think that the Chiefs have the same type of upside to keep this going, but it's all going to start with that centerpiece of the defense, Chris Jones. If you can bring him back, and that'll be your anchor of your defense, get another weapon or two for the offense as far as your receivers. They could win a third one and can keep this thing going. Beyond that is a bigger question at hand, but I think they can at least take this thing one more year and do something that we have never seen in the NFL, and as a three-peat Super Bowl champion.
I think it's really strong for them to do that. I totally do. First ever three-peat Super Bowl era champion. Yeah. And the last time the NFL saw a three-peat, none of us were born. So yeah, I agree with you. I 100% agree with you. I think it's there. It's there for the taking, and I can see them winning more than one. And I can see them being on top for a minute before some other team gets strong enough and experienced enough to take them down. So yeah, it just depends on how smart the Chiefs move, and if they can keep the right pieces together. And in my opinion, I think it is all about keeping Mahomes happy on offense and keeping Chris Jones happy on defense. They're both around similar ages. I think Chris Jones is a little older. I think he's 29 and Mahomes is 28. You build around these two and you get good pieces around these two. Help out Jones on the line and have good pieces that are solid in the back seven. And then on Mahomes, just keep that offensive line strong and get him a couple of weapons that he can go to. And I think he'll be fine too. And I think the team will be fine. So now they've had 6 years of prosperity and 5 years of, it's 6 straight years of ending their seasons no worse than the AFC Championship game. Yeah, we're seeing something that I think we might not see ever again. And we actually said this about the Patriots, which was a loosely tight dynasty. You could say they definitely were in the 2000 odds, not as much of one in the 2010s, but I think they were a different type of dynasty, I guess you could say. But I think with the Chiefs, I don't think we've seen this before, and I think we're going to see next February. We'll be talking about this team again being champs again. Ooh, man. Unfortunately, though, not all was celebratory. And they had their parade last week. Everything was great. Travis Kelce, he didn't give you you got to fight for your right to party. He gave you a drunken verse of Friends in Low Places by Garth Brooks. The crowd was happy, the crowd was hyped, and then a stupid fool decided to want to spray the place with lead. Hot lead, gunplay, fire. And so the city has been gripped in this terroristic event that's supposed to mark a celebratory time and a party. And it's supposed to celebrate victory, and it now a place where they would always celebrate victory is now marked as a vigil. So Mahomes and his wife Brittany, they paid a visit to the Children's Mercy Hospital in KC to visit young victims of that Super Bowl parade mass shooting. Currently, one person's dead and 22 others, like those 3, were injured. Now, Mahomes wrote on social media last week, quote, "Just like hashtag Chiefs Kingdom has always been there for me and my family, we want to be there for them." Close quote. And I think I can speak for my partner when I say this. We echo those same sentiments. My question to you: what does this now mean for future town championship parades?
I think I think it leaves a looming doubt that this thing will go on for an extended period of time, that we could see the end of championship parades at some point, because you got to look at the amount of police, a lot of, the first responders, the amount of first responders they had out there. Okay. And in that moment, in the moment of the chaos, when you go back and you watch it, I mean, I remember hitting up the chat that we're in with the news the day that it happened, last Wednesday. I'm on my way to work. It's the afternoon. I'm like, I've got the Chiefs parade, because there wasn't really much on at that time. So it's like I cut it on YouTube, and I was listening / in bits of traffic where it was stopped still in my travels, watching certain parts. And I remember I was stuck in a traffic jam on the interstate. Like, it was stop, go, stop, go, stop, go. And it was the moment that the shooting happened. Like, everybody's celebrating. They had just literally finished the speeches on stage. Like, they had literally just finished them. They were like migrating to the inside for some type of other part of the celebration. Next thing you know, you just start seeing people running. Like, and they didn't announce it right away. They start seeing people running. Like, they took off. Like, something was going on. To me, it reminded me of the time that the bomber or whatever in Boston. I forget what the name of what they called it now, but you know what I'm talking about. The Boston Marathon and the bomb and all that stuff. The way that everybody was running and the reaction to it reminded me a lot of that moment. And it was before they announced that it was gunshots. It's just the reaction, everybody running away, scurrying, reminded me of that type of reaction to them. So I say all that with the preference of, you think about that, you have this situation happen. This is, you look back, probably the last time that we had casualties of this nature for a Super Bowl parade was ironically the last time the Dallas Cowboys won a Super Bowl, because they had some situations at their Super Bowl parade. If you go back and look in 96, when they won that last one for the 95 season, and they had that parade, there were some casualties at that one as well. So to me, this is the first one we've seen in quite some time to this magnitude for the NFL level. But I think because of where we are at today, and this is at that time, we weren't even 40 days or like 40 some days into this new year. Okay. And we had already basically averaged one shooting per day, like as far as mass shootings, like it is where we were as the world. And I said what I said about the Cowboys situation because the world was much different back then. We weren't averaging mass shootings every day or multiple in a day or every other day. It was stuff going on, but it wasn't to the magnitude of what we have now. When you look at that, if you are somebody who has the power to make the decisions to schedule parade or some type of acknowledgement for what you have just accomplished, you have to look at these statistics right here and say, we're averaging a mass shooting 1 to 2 per day, daily at this moment. Do we want to take a chance of having us be part of that statistic by having the celebration here? I think those questions are going to be asked. I mean, it's not just Kansas City. I mean, you imagine if New York won the Super Bowl, like the Jets or the Giants. I mean, the Giants are not going anywhere close to the Super Bowl anytime soon. But when you think about the fact that you've got these teams that can win in different areas, there's different areas and different demographics that come to play when it comes to what can happen in the elements of a celebration. I wouldn't have thought that in Missouri that this would have happened, to be honest with you. But the fact that it did, it throws red flags there. And it's sad that in 2024, at this point in all of our lives, can't really celebrate anything anymore, because you're out there, you're celebrating stuff in cold temperatures. It's a February day. You got kids out of school. Celebrating a Super Bowl championship. And the next thing you know, you got kids in the hospital because stray bullets are hitting them over a stupid argument, supposedly. It
Yeah.
wasn't even anything that was like terroristic or
Mm-mm.
premeditated. It was a stupid fight. For me, though, me growing up, being born in the 80s, growing up through the 90s, I was
Mhm.
taught in my generation that you use your fist to if you have a disagreement to that nature, if it has to come to a physical altercation. Physical
Mhm.
altercations don't involve using weapons. That's the coward's way out. Okay.
Mhm.
That's like the only time I would ever banish use a weapon. I have them. We won't go into that situation here in this discussion. The only time I would ever use it is self-defense, like my life is in danger. Okay.
Right.
In that situation there's no excuse for you to have a gun. There really isn't. Because if everybody thought that way, except for law enforcement,
Oh,
if
man.
every single person going to an event like that thought that way, like, why do I need to bring a gun here? If every single person thought that way attending the event, we wouldn't have this situation.
Mhm.
We have sick-minded people out there who have to carry, their firearm with them everywhere. Some of them have to wave it around to make them feel good. That is the problem that I have. It has nothing to do with video games like Grand Theft Auto or whatever, messing with the minds of people to where that they're doing these things. People are already screwed up. Then you bottled them up during COVID for years and locked them in the house, which made it even worse. And then all of this is unraveling from that and many things that have been layered and layered and layered onto people for many years now. So when I weigh all that, I will not be surprised if by the turn of the next decade for the 2030s that we don't have parades anymore, or at least maybe not completely banish them, but I wouldn't be surprised if certain locations geographically throughout the United States, if a
Yeah,
certain
hold on.
team wins a Super Bowl, they won't have a parade because of how their area may react to it. Or if they do have a parade, they may do it in another city, which why would you do that? Because that's not even celebrating your own city
Your
that
own
just
cities.
won the thing.
Mhm.
So, and then it becomes pointless. So, overall, I think that this past shooting with this Super Bowl parade is going to affect ones going forward. The question is how soon and how big of an impact will it have? I think it will be a pretty severe one in time.
Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, 2030 is only 5+ years off. So I could see that happening. I could see cities saying, municipalities saying, nah, no, we're not holding them. I can see that. I don't want that to happen because I think it's great for civic pride to actually have those events take place. Because I think it's one of the few times you will see a mass of people get together universally for a happy purpose. And really that's what celebrating sports is about, is to be amongst like-minded, like-hearted, like-thought people who love what I love and want to celebrate in what I want to celebrate in, and to have something tragic happen like this. And it's unfortunate.
I had no second thoughts of going to WrestleMania until this moment right here. Like
And that's a shame.
now I'm starting to have second thoughts. If I ultimately decide not to go, this will have been what tips the scales. But right now the plans are still in
Mhm.
place. I mean, the tickets are bought, everything. But stuff can always be refunded when you have insurance packages and things. So, I'm serious when I say this. It's like these certain events are now making me rethink what I'm going to do with my life for a 4 to 5 day span in April, because I've been planning for months now, especially with how my year, going on the personal side for a second, how my year went last year. I didn't know if I was even going to be here at this point next year, or at this point this year, for a short period of time. It was a very quick glimpse of time, but still looking at that and being here, and then fast forward to I went through all that just to potentially be taken out by a bullet and put myself in a position like that. Like, if it's going on here in Kansas City, it can go on in Philadelphia. So for me, it has me rethinking my own plans, because WrestleMania is just like the Super Bowl. It's a Super Bowl of professional wrestling. Okay. And that's where I'm planning on being in April. So just being 100, this topic right here and what we experienced last week with that, it already has me rethinking the possibility of I may potentially change my plans. I'm still 100% like I want to go, but there's this looming dark cloud now that now has me thinking like, should I go? I don't know. Like that's just me. But when you hear statistics of how many mass shootings we're having in this country and around the world on a daily, weekly, monthly basis in a very short period of time, it will cause you to start thinking alternatives.
Yeah, that's what I hate. That events like this will make not just you, anybody give pause to celebrating life, because that's what these events do. It is to rob us of these moments. And yes, the whole shooting came about because of a disagreement. And yes, I'm with you. Pastor Newsom shakes his eyes, said a bar that said gun control is using both hands in my land. I grew up, that's how you settle disputes.
Yeah.
And we had a phrase when I was growing up where if you had a disagreement with somebody, say, yeah, you go outside and the other party goes outside, you duke it out. And after that, you shake hands, dap up, and you go forward no matter who won or who lost. But what you do is you leave that grievance in the grass, as they say. You leave it in the grass. You know, you tussle, you fight. You don't kill because you want to live. So, you get the aggression out. But then after that, let's go on with your life. Because life is too precious to have crap like that exist. And what I find most unfortunate is that here we are in a sports lane, and just like many other aspects of life, violence taints it yet again. And and you mentioned earlier, in a world where, and especially in a country where there's a lot of tension that is on you, and things may not be great for everybody, and for most people it's not. You just want to escape. You want to provide the escape, and this was supposed to be an escape. This was supposed to give people hope of, wow, so we see an entity that is in my city achieve something. Well, if they can achieve that, they're giving me hope to push forward and persevere to achieve what I am destined to achieve.
Yeah. And I feel the same way when it comes to football as it is for professional wrestling. It's like watching the two different events, it's like our escape from all the BS that we got going on out there in the streets. Okay. Why are you bringing that into what our safehood is? Like what our sanctity is? Like that's why I've already second guessing my plans for the next 6 weeks. Okay.
I hate that. But yeah, but it's valid. Yeah.
At the same time, it's like you only get one trip in this thing when it comes to life. I mean, you can say what you want about the beliefs. We can have that talk another day, but there's only one thing that's guaranteed that we know of. We only got one trip that goes around, and I would much rather have several more years, potential decades, with my man Cole Johnson up here talking and having a good time than put myself in a situation to where I could potentially be taken out when I could have just watched the event at home. Right. So there's different things when it comes to that, but it's sad that a actual event like this has me thinking that way. Will I lean one way or the other? I don't know. I still got several weeks to figure this out, but this situation in this past week with the parade is just an example of it has me thinking this, because these mass shootings are getting worse, and it's sad that we cannot have an old school like discussion to figure things out, because people can't communicate anymore. Like what you and I do, where we have communication on the podcast, is very rare. Like people have podcasts, and like you and Wise, you dig deep with mentality and have some great conversations there, and us here. And I think that's a really rare thing, because out there in the real world too, there's not a lot of people that can have these type of down home intellectual conversations, because when you get to that point, like at this parade, when you're trying to, it seems like there's some type of disconnect, and the first connection that person has is, I play video games, I just shot a mother father over here because I didn't agree with what they're doing. They're gonna do that in real life? No, there's consequences, for one, and two, you just ended somebody's life that was breathing before you even came across them. Like, I don't know. There's so many mixed feelings that I have with this that's affecting my own life right now based on what happened last week with the Chiefs. So my heart goes out to all those of you that were affected, lost life, the ones injured, all of you. It's very sad. And, it's the worst part about it is that these guys that did this were very young. They were I think they were teenagers.
Right. Yeah, they were teenagers.
They got the whole rest of their life ahead of them, but now spending it in, a prison somewhere, you just threw it all away just for 8 seconds of defame. I wouldn't even say fame, but defame, because you got on the news and now you're out. Like, that's how quick it was. So I don't know, man. There's a whole lot more of this going on, because the events of what we've encountered since COVID and even before that have been driving people mad, when we just want the small little escape to, whether it's watch football or wrestling or baseball or whatever sport or entertainment it is, and some little idiot's got to bring a gun to the event and ruin everything. And that's why we're on this tangent that we're on in this topic.
That's all right. It needs to be discussed. It unfortunately does. I hate to say it, but it does. And Dante, I'm sure Drew and I are with you when you say this too. It's not just my escape, it's my yum. Don't yuck my yum. I'm with you 100%. And he says it's so sad, but I think they should move the Super Bowl halftime show to Super Bowl celebration. But it's crazy they've had the shooting in Vegas. Yeah, with a festival they had early October. I forgot what year, but it's recent. I think it was 2021 or 2021 or 22, I think. But yeah, it was recent. 6 says, look, tighten security or better security. And sometimes that's great, and other times maybe not so. But our hearts, our thoughts, our prayers, and our well wishes are with those who did suffer that brutal event that happens to have marred the most recent celebration of the now newest dynasty of the NFL in the Kansas City Chiefs. But we're not going to have that yucca yum. Heck no. That's just not how we roll.
Total football talk.
Where are my dogs at? Oh, yes. But instead of it being our grand champ of the week, no. We're going to have a special grand champ or dogs of the week. We're going to have our top 5 dogs of the year. And for his, I will take it to Drew.
So with this, I pitched this to Cole last week as far as, the top 5 dogs of the week, or top 5 dogs of the year, and top 5 snowflakes of the year, because, we give you the take of who our pick was for that week. And now that the season is over, I felt like it was a good idea to give us the take on the top 5 of the season. Starting off with number 5, I think I got to go with Tyreek Hill as my number 5 for this right here. And with that being said, the reason why I have him for a number 5, look at the stats that this guy was putting up with the Dolphins all year long. Some people wanted to say it was Tua. I don't care who you were feeding or using the ball to feed Tyreek Hill. He was going to get those yards regardless. Tua did his job, but Tyreek Hill definitely was the tipping of the scales that got them as far as they did to the success that they had offensively. It all went through Tyreek Hill. At 4, even though they lost the way that they did, and they went down the way that they did in the playoffs, I have to give my number 4 dog of the week to Dakota Rain Prescott, as one Kyle Nash would say, for the numbers that he put up during the regular season. I just feel like he deserves to get the number 4 pick for the dog of the season, even though he did a bad job in the playoffs. I feel like he deserves to be recognized for his dog-like senses throughout this year. So I'm giving it so far my number 5 to Tyreek Hill, my number 4 to Dakota Rain Prescott. Now, number 3. This is a tough one. This was a very big, tough one, and it comes from the reigning NFC champions, from the 49ers. Putting this person at 3 was very tough for me to do in some ways, but in some ways it wasn't, because I'm going to have to go with the quarterback of the 49ers, that being Brock Purdy, quarterback, for what he did coming back from that injury that he sustained in the NFC Championship the year prior, then rehabilitating himself, coming back, playing, leading his team to the great success that they had this year. Yeah, they lost 3 straight games, but they bounced back and made it all the way to the Super Bowl. Regardless of that, regardless of what they did in the playoffs, regular season-wise, they had a great season. He would not have been able to do it without the one that some people out there like to call a game manager in Brock Purdy, but I think that's a good problem to have if you ask me. At number 2, my voting for the NFL MVP and my voting for the NFL Offensive Player of the Year didn't go the way that I had hoped. And I'm going to kind of rewrite that, and Cole knows exactly where I'm going to go with this when it comes to 1 and 2 here. And for my dogs of the year, when it comes to my 1 and 2, I'm going to put it to Lamar Jackson, the one who was named the NFL MVP for this season. A lot of you are probably saying, why don't you have him at 1? Well, they had a great defense. As much as production as he gave on the offense at quarterback and did what he did between scrambling around and throwing the ball, he did great. I'm not throwing any shade on Lamar, but the impact to his team wasn't as severe as what my number 1 gave to his. Lamar had help on the defensive side. He was the spark on the offensive side. It was the 100% go-to person on the offensive side. But if it wasn't for their defense, they wouldn't have gotten to the AFC Championship, and that's my opinion on that. Now, when it comes to the number 1 dog of the year, I'm going to take this and lean it in a little bit more direction back towards a team that I had previously talked about in this top 5. Yeah, Brock Purdy was great and did great things as a quarterback to manage them and get them to where they were. And he did have some stats that were a little bit above game manager level. But what helped him get the stats that he did, passing and moving the ball around, was the ability to mix the plays up, running the ball. From a running back who probably had the best conversation or was a part of the conversation for MVP in the best way that we've seen a running back in many, many years, I'd have to give my number 1 to Christian McCaffrey, because the 49ers would not have won as many games, would not have gotten as far as they did last year in the NFC Championship or this year to the Super Bowl, losing both games, yes, but they would not have even gotten that far had they not made that trade with Carolina to bring Christian McCaffrey in there at running back. That move alone solidified the culture of your entire offense, because you found your quarterback as Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy. You traded for Christian McCaffrey. You got all the other weapons around you. You got Trent Williams, the anchor of the offensive line. You got other weapons with Kittle and Deebo Samuel as wide receivers, and your running back right there. And he's having the numbers of what he did, getting close. He was, for a while I thought that he was going to potentially flirt with Eric Dickerson's record. When I look at all of that, when I look at how everything is going out here for this 49ers team, it would not have happened without C-Mac. And my number one dog of the year is Christian McCaffrey. And those are my 5 picks for my dogs of the year.
All right. Nice choices. Like them a lot. Thank you, sir. All right. So there's many to choose from, and hopefully, I mean, we saw some good play and actually some good coaching too, and here are mine. So I'll start with number 5, and mine will be TJ Watt. And I have to give him props, getting 19 sacks on the year for a team that offensively stunk up the joint is a tip of the cap par excellence. I give him massive credit for being the reason why, the biggest reason why, I should say, the Steelers actually made it to the playoffs. And I think he was in strong contention for Defensive Player of the Year, and I had to give that to him. I mean, the dude just he came, he balled, he performed week after week, and look, 17 games, he had more than a sack a game, so I got to give him credit for that. So yeah, my number 5 is TJ Watt. Number 4, I have to go with CJ Stroud, and the reason why. Who would have thought that we'd be talking about a rookie quarterback who only threw for 5 interceptions and he started 15 games? The offensive rookie of the year gave you over 4,000 yards, gave you 20 plus touchdowns. I think it was 23 he gave you. And he played 2 playoff games and didn't turn the ball over in either game. So he knows the value of taking care of the ball, and I appreciate that. And of course, yes, he's on the team that I root for, obviously. So yeah, that's also added bonus, but I didn't put him on there because I root for him. I put him on there because he is deserving of this honor. So my number 4 dog or grand champ of the year is CJ Stroud. Number 3, I have to go with another defensive player in Myles Garrett. 14 sacks. He's defensive player of the year. He was double teamed more than any other in NFL, save for Micah Parsons. And for a guy that on the other end, he was supposed to have help in Zadarius Smith that did not help him quite so well and quite so much. He was the biggest focal point. And I know this because with the Texans, I saw him with 2 games they had to play against him. And the game plan was simple. Neutralize number 95, and that is what every team has to do. And if you neutralize 95, your chances of winning increase exponentially. But neutralizing them is a tough task, and for most teams, it was a task they failed in doing. So I had to give credit to Myles Garrett, and along with it as well, this guy was considered a troublemaker and a malcontent. And to see him not be so much closely associated with his brouhaha with Steelers now, technically, starting quarterback Mason Rudolph, but now be associated with great, strong defensive play, it's a great testament to him. And he's the quintessential, unquestioned leader of the team, let alone the defense of the Browns. So, yes, my number 3 dog or grand champ is Myles Garrett, the defensive end for the Browns. Number 2, I'm with my partner. I'm with my brother when he says this. The 49ers would not have been playing to hold a lead in overtime, sans the presence of number 23. Christian McCaffrey, my hope is that he has now elevated the thought process of the ownership groups in the National Football League and having the understanding that a running back is vastly important, because they have tried to monetarily devalue the position and Christian McCaffrey's presence helped the defense out. It helped Brock Purdy out. And it definitely helped Kyle Shanahan out. You need to have that presence that could help move the chains and not have to just throw it all over the place, but to actually move it on the ground. And to me, no player did that better than him this year. Yes, you could say Lamar Jackson. Yes, you could say Josh Allen. Christian McCaffrey. He was the best that did it this year. And to mark how important his position is, the Lions had a two-headed monster in David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And it took the two of them to have the same type of impact that Christian McCaffrey by his lonesome self did. So yes, my number 2 dog, or my number 2 grand champ, Christian McCaffrey. And number 1, I have to give it to him, although he did not win MVP, although this was a subpar year in terms of stats, although the team didn't perform well in the regular season the way they should have. What matters most is that he threw a 3-yard touchdown pass to McCole Hartman to seal the deal and now cement the red and the yellow as a dynasty. And I am talking about number 15, Patrick Mahomes. No bigger dog to me this year than him. And obstacles were thrown in his direction. He couldn't run the offense the way he wanted to run it. It wasn't as fluid as it was back in 2019 and 2020. It was more, the offense now represented more 3 yards of a cloud of dust than a bomb down the field. But make no mistake about it, he could take his shots down the field, and he did in the Super Bowl even. But I give him this because he was what the team needed when the team needed it. If the team needed him to be the big-time stud superstar in the pocket, he was that. If the team needed him to simply scale it back and not make the mistake and turn the ball over, he did that. If the team needed him to be a combination thereof, he did that. The team needed him to throw, he did. The team needed him to run, he did. Right now, we are looking at a guy where you cannot compare the ones who were playing today to him, because he's now being compared to the greats of the past. And he should be, because at 28 years of age, he has 3 Super Bowl rings and 3 Super Bowl MVPs to show for it. So who can you compete? Who can you compare in today's times to what he is now? Right now, you can't. And now, just like it was with Brady, now people are shooting after Mahomes. And now people are going to say, well, we got to have him. And you're going to see teams want to build teams around a dynamic quarterback like him, who can switch and be the elite QB and game changer 1 minute and the game manager the next, and know when to be what. So my grand champion of the year is Patrick Mahomes. And I think it's deserving because the quarterback position is now his, and it's everybody else's world. It's everybody else's that's orbiting around his world. And that's just how it is. And we'll be back with the chopping block.
Coming up next, the featured attractions. This is Total Football Talk. Comey Media Incorporated. Creating content magic in the real world.
Little right here. Look at the inside of these cakes. Now, when you bite into it, just as I demonstrated while you were talking at the beginning of your discussion right there, I could taste the drugs inside of this cake, Sick. I could taste the addiction within the cream filling of this cake right here, to where they not only just with that cake right there, but they made an ice cream out of it. They made an ice cream out of it. A 1-pint Christmas tree cake ice cream. Look at that little just smile up there. Look, she is up to no good on there. Look at that. Look at that smile on there, Sick. She knows that she got you. got him is what's in her mind right now.
Acknowledge me.
Look at that little smile right there. She's up to no good.
D. Willie in the evening. Thursdays at 11:15 p.m. Eastern, 10:15 p.m. Central. Exclusively on Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, look. Hey, stop playing games. Y'all already know. Go ahead and toss him some Willie Bucks. Ain't nobody playing around. Hey, $ D Willie 87. Go ahead, hit him up on the Cash App, and go ahead and give him some Willie the Bucks. Look at Drew looking stoic, ladies and gentlemen. Stoic on that $10 bill. So go ahead, slide my man over some Willie Bucks, and we good. That's all I'm saying. We good. How about some Willie Bucks?
Sertoba Media, where the struggle is real to be awesome.
If you're looking for a sports program that gives you the flavor.
Washington Commanders? Really?
This whole thing stinks to high heaven.
That pulls no punches.
Thuggish act by a thuggish actor.
That gives you some humor.
Praise everything LeBron does and never criticize it.
If you want a show that gives you good times, then this is that show. BS3 Network proudly presents.
I am Cole Johnson, and welcome to
Cole Sports with a Z. Every Friday on Patreon, and every Saturday on YouTube, Spreaker, and all other outlets.
With Drew Willingham, I am Cole Johnson. Welcome back to Total Football Talk. We appreciate the love, and we also appreciate the comments that we've received, because they've been, quote, both entertaining and insightful. For instance, Dante says, look, it's awkward talking about the state of affairs of college football, how volatile it is with transport portal and NILs. He says, look, but you got NILs in college football, but it's a great time for college coaches this offseason, but definitely next season. And he also says, congratulations to the Chiefs and Big Red, or Andy Reid. He said, it just goes to show how important a quarterback is. Pat won back-to-back against the most talented teams in the NFL in the biggest game. I also say biggest games, because he went to Buffalo and did the thing. He went to Baltimore and did the thing. And then, of course, you had the Super Bowl against the 49ers. 3 stout defenses, and he went 3-0 against them. So, yes, congratulations to them, and congratulations to Mahomes. He says, so we are also witnessing greatness. All teams and quarterbacks have to elevate their game to the Chiefs level. Let's be clear, it is fun to watch. Finally, a non-Chiefs fan that gets it. Yes, thank you. That's exactly how I look at it. It's fun because now I want my team to aspire to be that lofty and say, okay, that is the goal. Let's reach up there and get it. And let's take them down. And let's have fun doing it. Yeah. I think that's how it's supposed to be. And here's the insightful part too. Dante also says, look, it's so sad, but oh no, I'm sorry. He said something else, but oh, never mind. I thought he said something else. Oh, and here's the funny part. 6 says, look, if you think the Little Debbie's commercial is bad, I'll send you a YouTube short. It's just absurd.
Yeah, and believe me, Sick knows what he's talking about and can 100% validate when he sends me some wild shorts, man. So when it comes to, he was a part of that episode and getting inspiration from that, finding these shorts, yeah, he'll send them to you. You will see that this is definitely a real thing. But there was one thing that you played during that commercial break that had my gear spinning, something I wanted to share with our TFT audience today. Our TFT tribe, as what Vicola likes to say. And the commercial that was played as part of that commercial pack, and the announcement from last night's special stream that we will be back on March 3rd with Season Mother Fathering 2. Will begin Sunday, March 3rd at 9:05 p.m. Eastern Time, a special time for the spring for this year. It will be back on Thursdays at some point, but for a special springtime, it will be on Sundays, 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time.
Acknowledge me. Nice. Yes. Season 2 D Will in the evening. All right. Congratulations. I'm glad that you're able to pump out such great entertainment of that ilk, which of course is different than this, but still it's entertaining nonetheless. Ike, being so kind-hearted to you, he says, wait, what about Joe Flacco? And he said, and Drew picked Dak.
Yeah, when I listened to you talk and give your picks, I immediately regretted picking Dak.
Oh, Lord.
I was like, I picked Dak over Mahomes. Like, thinking about my list, I was like, yeah, I should have probably spent a little bit more time on that list. But, I spent too much focus on the regular season rather than the season as a whole and playoffs. But yeah, I really like who you had selected for your 5, even going with some defensive picks too with Myles Garrett selection as well. So yeah, I see where you're coming from, Ike. Joe Flacco, you can give him some thought, but more so the shade thrown at me for picking Dak over Mahomes. I'll give you that one.
Yeah. Well, look. Dak did finish second in the MVP voting. So there you go. Just to help you out. Now, I know before the commercial said that feature attraction is next, but there isn't a game to feature or attract. And there won't be one for the next 5 weeks. So we're going into the chopping block instead. Goodness gracious. The Las Vegas Raiders quarterback, Jimmy McCarron. I really wish this was an Onion article. Anyway, he will be suspended for the first 2 games next year for violating the league's policy on performance-enhancing substances. And Garoppolo will not appeal the ban. Now, the Raiders are expected to release Garoppolo before he's due to be paid over $11 million, a bonus, next month. The suspension also allows for that in guaranteed base salary for the next season to be voided. The senior veteran signed a 3-year deal worth $72.75 million with the team last offseason, reuniting himself with Josh McDaniels, or as my wonderful colleague will mention him, Josh McDummy. But after he and general manager Dave Ziegler got fired in midseason, Garoppolo was benched in favor of Aiden O'Connell, who then started the rest of the season and probably will start the 2024 season, barring whoever they select in the upcoming draft. My question to you, sir, is how can somebody test positive for PEDs with their performance not being enhanced?
You pose a really good question with this one, because I've never I can't really say short life, somewhat extended life, I would say now at this point, have never seen anybody taking PEDs and still suck. Because that is exactly what we witnessed in the 2023 season. You had a quarterback take PEDs and suck. You should definitely be ashamed of yourself. Like, in a worse fashion, that you should be ashamed of yourself if you took PEDs and were the best. Okay? If you took PEDs and you became the best, then yeah, you should be ashamed. But if you're Jimmy G and you took PEDs and sucked, absolutely sucked, I'm probably going to say the word suck more than any other word I've ever said on any other program, because he sucked. He took PEDs and sucked. I just don't understand how you suck when you take PEDs. How You got a 2-game suspension for taking PEDs and sucking. You sucked. You absolutely sucked. You took PEDs, and the team was terrible. You took PEDs. They kicked you off the team. They did better. They did better without your PED using sucking self. You sucked the soul out of the team when you sucked while playing with PEDs. You are a disgrace to quarterbacks of all between NFL, XFL, UFL, whatever FL/college FL, whatever you want to throw an FL at, you effed up as you sucked while taking PEDs. I'm gonna have fun breaking that clip down later. But anyway, when it comes to this, the key words, you took PEDs and you sucked. PEDs make you better. They don't make you regress. But in this case, they did because you sucked. You absolutely sucked, Jimmy G. So, in your question, how can somebody test positives for PEDs with their performance not being enhanced? I can tell you why. Because they sucked!
Ain't nothing else for me to add.
Hey. Who's giving them the business?
Apparently, someone else's performance must have sucked, but he didn't take PEDs. He just happened to coach the defense of the losing Super Bowl team. The 49ers fired defensive coordinator Steve Wilks Wednesday, 3 days after losing the Super Bowl to the Chiefs, and only 1 year on the staff. The head coach of the team, Kyle Shanahan, announced the decision to move on, and he called it, gosh, so disingenuous. The fact that he actually said it was, quote, a really tough decision, close quote, to execute the firing, but said that he wants to find a coordinator who was a better scheme fit for the talent on the 49ers defense.
That was a lie.
He went on to say the following as well. Lord, quote, we felt strongly that this was the decision that was best for our organization. Even though it was one I didn't want to make, it was something that once I realized that a different direction was what's best for our organization, it's something that I have to do. Close quote. All right. Is the firing of Steve Wilks by Kyle Shanahan a scapegoat reason why they parted ways?
It's another good question. You had discussed last week about their cover zero package, that next to near final drive, when you have 13 plays and you are not providing the best defensive coverage in those moments. Okay. So you yourself, Cole, you were calling Steve Wilks out before he actually got fired. Now, when you look back on the 49ers season, I mean, they had one hell of a season. Okay, they did. In comparison to what they did the year prior, going to the NFC Championship, losing in the NFC Championship game as a result of Brock Purdy getting hurt, coming back this year and doing what they did. Now, I think that part of this kind of stems from when they took those 3 straight losses in the regular season, because had you played great throughout the season and then had the loss in the Super Bowl, I don't think that would have been enough to warrant his dismissal. And, I was going to say an early dismissal, but in the fashion that it happened, I don't think that it would have warranted that. The 49ers, in that span that they lost those 3 games, they lost to the Vikings, they lost to the Bengals, and they lost to the Browns. Okay. When they lost those games, it wasn't like they got beat on. Okay. It wasn't like the severe beating to the Broncos, handed down, they were handed down 70-20 or whatnot from the Dolphins. It wasn't like that type of beat down.
No.
But it was something to be concerned about because when you're losing to the Bengals, who at that time were led by a dumpster Pelican that I have in my commercial with you of Joe Burrow getting hurt, having the backup quarterback and all that situation there, you lost to that team right there. Then you lose again before that to the Vikings. And then with the Browns, and there's many questions around all three of those teams throughout this year, and not just because of the health of their number one star, but just for other looming things in the air that are causing distractions to the team from afar. So when I put all that into the equation, and I think about it, I think that this 3-game stretch right here of the 3 losses played a pivotal role in this dismissal of Steve Wilks. And what happened in the Super Bowl was like the icing, the frosting, the cherry on top, okay, of the entire project, because there was probably already that bad taste in their mouth when they entered the playoffs thinking, like, we got exposed during that 3-week stretch. It could potentially happen again in this playoffs. And if it happens to where we get exposed again, unfortunately happen to be on the biggest stage, if we get exposed again, this guy is going to be our scapegoat. It seemed like what it was. I think Steve Wilks was kind of strung along as a scapegoat at this point, because had you lost to the manner of kind of like how the Eagles did, in the playoffs, I would say probably that would warrant your defensive coordinator to potentially be axed at that point if all of those cards aligned with that type of loss for the 49ers, okay? For the fact that Steve Wilks and this team, you made a trade during the year to bring in Chase Young to enhance your defense. You had done everything you could to improve the defense. Looking at the Super Bowl in itself, I mean, you only gave up 25 points, and that was through overtime. I mean, the defense throughout the game was kind of holding Mahomes until the second half, okay? The first half, they were on point. I don't have any complaints about this defense in the first half, as they only allotted 3 total points in the first half of the Super Bowl, okay? For whatever reason, the next half, they give up 17 points in the Super Bowl. Had you given up like the Eagles, like, when you're playing Green Bay and you're Dallas, okay, like that situation too, and you're giving up 41 points. If you gave up 41 points and you're Dan Quinn, you don't get fired and you get a head coaching position, yet you're Steve Wilks and you give up 25 points in the Super Bowl and you get fired, I have no reason but to think that why he has to be a scapegoat here, because we were talking about him last week. You and I were talking about the mistakes, the cover zero, all that, but with really no inclination or thinking that he was going to get fired when we had this episode the week later.
Exactly.
You were throwing shade at him for the cover zero, just like I would or anybody else would for that type of play, getting animated about it, but not on the other hand thinking that he was going to get fired over it. When you have Dan Quinn giving up 41 points in a playoff game, getting eliminated early in the playoffs, yet becomes a head coach of another dumpster Pelican team, like that doesn't make any sense. So for that, when I put it all into perspective, I have to give Wilks here in this question, as he was the scapegoat for this. It was either him or Shundahan, because I call Mike Shanahan and his son Kyle the Shund-a-hands, because they are being shunned in this moment, because the Shundahan legend went from winning 3 Super Bowls in the 90s with the 49ers with 1 and 2 more with the Broncos to make 3, to where son Kyle Shundahan has now lost in the biggest deficit upset with the Atlanta Falcons as the offensive coordinator years back, and now 2 Super Bowls as a head coach with the 49ers. He's 0-3, Pop's 3-0. There you go for the Shundahan legacy.
I know that has something also to do with the fact that they both were also on the commander staff too. And this is where I am with it. He held the Chiefs 19 points in regulation. And I guess Wilkes also calls the plays on offense too.
Hey. Who's giving them the business?
So there's talk that Brandon Staley don't hire him.
Hey. Who's giving them the business?
Better matters. Deshaun Watson actually might have to testify again in a massage case. I know this mess was supposedly done when he paid off, settled with 23 of the 26 who filed against him, but there's still 3 outstanding suits. Well, there still were 3 outstanding suits. One of them dropped him. But nearly 3 years since those first lawsuits against him were filed by multiple women, the Browns QB really can't stay starter at the moment, but probably might be. Who knows? He might have to testify again. And he may have to testify in person in a deposition before the 1st of August. Now, he last appeared last June in Houston, but a new court finally states that the woman attorney ended it hours later. Now, my question to you, sir, how can I phrase this? I got to find a way that I can phrase this correctly. How can I phrase this? All right, I'll just come on and say it. All right, so you have this guy who seemingly wants to be a voyeur, or wants to have voyeurs just look at him do his thing. Is it possible that he will never shake his sexual misconduct past?
He may never shake it like he doesn't shake that towel that you used to talk about when it came to him in the locker room and his shoulder. I will never, I don't think in my lifetime I will ever forget the cinematic displays of Cole Johnson reiterating what happens in a Deshaun Watson situation at the massage table.
Can't help it.
Because it's burned in my brain now when I think about this situation right here with Deshaun Watson. If it's possible for him to shake the misconduct of his past, I don't think so. And that's why he signed that type of contract that he did, so he can buy his way out of whatever past problems he's created for his future. So when it comes to Deshaun Watson and all that money, you see that clip of Jerry Maguire, show me the money, bring me the money. That is what's happening in this moment, because now you got to give it all back out, because you have been touching and poking and prodding in ways that you shouldn't have been doing over the past half decade, apparently, there, sir. So it's not just us throwing shade on you. We're not defaming you in any way. This is all public knowledge. For you to have to go and, testify again when we thought that this was over, you put yourself in the situation, bro. Not me, not Cole, not our people in the chat here on whatever platform that we are streaming on in this moment they're commenting on. We didn't put you in the situation. You did. So you should have thought about that before you were twirling the towel around or whatever's underneath it before all of this unraveled and became what it was.
Oh, yeah, girl. Come on over here. Yeah. Heifers don't like it when they want to see a man pull out his nightstick and adjust it over and over and over. Oh, Lord. Sorry for that being premature, but we are now in the snowflake of the week. But we're going to do our top 5 snowflakes. And since I have a meeting that I have to attend, I shall do the honors and go first. And here are my 5. So I had to think long and hard about this. And I do mean long and I do mean hard. Pause. Now, here are my 5. At number 5, I got to give it to Tyler Bass, and he's the kicker of the Bills. Reason being is that he now has inflicted pain upon Western New York in ways that has never happened since Scott Norwood 33 years prior. And now they have to hear the words wide right yet again. Congratulations, Tyler. You have made the best fan base, at least the most entertaining fan base in NFL, go completely catatonic. Number 4, Jimmy G. We already talked why. I mean, come on now. You take PEDs and you actually regress. You should be ashamed of yourself, son. PEDs are supposed to. Never mind. Number 4 is snowflake is Jimmy G. Jimmy Garoppolo. Number 3, Nick Sirianni. Here's why you're being named, Mr. Sirianni. You're being named as such because you had the team within this close of a range of winning it all, and you made the team's distance to the Super Bowl championship wider because you thought it was you that brought the team there. No, it was a collective effort that you were part of, but it was a collective effort that did it. But you thought you were more responsible for it than you actually were. And because of it, you may have ruined a QB in the process. I hope that he has not been ruined by you. So number 3, Sirianni. Number 2, Kyle Shanahan. Why would you not actually say, you know what, this is my doing? And if you felt as though the defense was not up to snuff in terms of a personnel fit or a scheme fit, explain it to them and then come together and see if the fit can be better. You held the best QB in the game, in the biggest game of the year, to 19 regulation points. But, the most innovative offense in the game only scored 19. But you fired your defensive coordinator. You should have fired your offensive coordinator. Oh, you can't because you're also the offensive coordinator too. You should eat that, son. That game is your fault that they lost. Not Steve Wilkes, yours. Eat that. And you'll have to eat that the rest of your life. Even if you win a chip, you got to eat that. And then number 1, my snowflake of the year, Jim Irsay. Why? Because this dummy said that he was being discriminated against because he is Big Daddy Warbucks. No, son, you're not being discriminated against because you're rich. You're being discriminated against because you're a dummy. Because you put a hot take such as, look, let the running backs just get it off the glass. I mean, they shouldn't whine about what they get. The market's the market. And then you had to eat them words and slide Jonathan Taylor, yes, your running back on your team, a whole boatload of money because he is the best player on your team. You had to do that, sir. And you're a dummy because you seem to still not learn how to not drink and drive. And yes, I understand that you had some issues health-wise. You know what? I don't care because you were still an idiot. And you will still continue to be an idiot until you prove otherwise. So yeah, so my top 5 snowflakes. Number 5, Tyler Bass. Number 4, Jimmy Garoppolo. Number 3, Nick Sirianni. Number 2, Kyle Shanahan. And number 1, the snowflake of the year for me, Jim Irsay, the dolt of an owner of the Indianapolis Colts. Dummy. And those are mine. And hopefully I'll be back. If not, I will see you all next week. But I shall return if it continues. But here's Drew's snowflakes of the year. Unfortunately,
there it is. I did it again. When it comes to like the snowflakes of the year, Cole has a great set of snowflakes of the year, but I actually have a little bit of a different list of snowflakes of the year. And my number one that I have to, no, I'm going to start from 5, work my way up to 1. So for my number 5 snowflake of the year, I got to give it to Arthur Smith. The Falcons 7-10, lackluster finish in that division, and that mustache on old Artie just pisses me off. So when it comes to that right there, Arthur Smith gets the number 5 snowflake of the year award for me. Comes to my number 4, this head coach that gets this pick right here is one that taunted fans when he was at the highest of highs, and then when he was at the lowest of lows, looked like a little crybaby out there on the sideline. And I'm going to give my number 4 snowflake of the year to Nick Sirianni. Number 5 again, I had Artie Smith with that mustache that pisses me off. Number 4 is Nick Sirianni. Now, number 3. Got to go with somebody who has some success this year, taking a team all the way to the promised land, to the Super Bowl, but lost because of bad decisions throughout the game. And then wanted to use a scapegoat like Steve Wilkes to say this is why we lost the game. No, Kyle Shundahan, a.k.a. Kyle Shanahan. You are the number 3 snowflake on my list for that reason right there, placing the blame on others instead of accepting it as your own. Number 2 snowflake of the year, have to give it to the hoodie, the man who had been almost coaching a team for a quarter century for 24 years, that being old Bill Belichick. That is my pick for the number 2 snowflake of the year as Cool McCain jumps up in here. Appreciate you jumping in here, my man. And now, my number 1 snowflake of the year goes to a man that we discussed earlier in this show as someone who took PEDs and sucked. The number 1 snowflake of the year, in my opinion, is Jimmy Garoppolo, old Jimmy G, because how do you take PEDs and still suck? That is my take. Number 1 snowflake, Jimmy G.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. When it comes to my snowflakes of the year, that's who I'm rolling with. And that's who we're taking into the post game.
Total football talk.
As long as it's one. Oh, that's great. I love it. I hope it actually is recording. Listening to it.
It's been 4 great hours of fun for the post game. Just want to tell you guys that we got more teams to cover next week for our grading scale. We covered 8 of 32 teams covering the AFC East and the NFC East today. And there's only one more thing left to do, and that's look at one awesome outro from a man, Cole Johnson. I am Drew Willingham. There's only one more thing I have left to tell you, and that is to stay safe out here in these streets.